Good morning, everyone. I will call this Board of County Commissioners meeting to order. It is April 15th, 2025, and it is 10 a.m. We'll start with a salute to the flag, and ADA Mary Canderas will lead us in the salute to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Madam Clerk, if we could please do a roll call.
Certainly. Chair Alexis Hill.
Here.
Vice Chair Jean Herman.
Here.
Mike Clark.
Present.
Mariluz Garcia.
Here.
Clara Andriola.
Present.
County Manager Eric Brown.
Here.
Chief Deputy District Attorney Mary Canderas.
Here.
And I'm Jan Galasini, your County Clerk. Madam, you have a quorum.
Thank you so much. We will now move into item 3, our public comment. Manager Brown.
Item 3 is public comment. Comment heard under this item will be limited to 3 minutes per person and may pertain to matters both on and off the commission agenda. Unused time may not be allocated to other speakers. The commission will also hear public comment during individual action items with comment limited to 3 minutes per person. Comments are to be made to the commission as a whole. Virtual public comment may be taken when facilities are available. A speaker's viewpoint will not be restricted. However, reasonable restrictions may be imposed upon the time, place, and manner of speech, irrelevant statements, unduly repetitious statements, and personal attacks that would objectively antagonize or incite others are examples of speech that may be reasonably limited. The Board of County Commissioners carries out the business of Washoe County and its residents during its meetings. The presiding officer may order a person be removed if the person's conduct or statements disrupt the order of safety or safety of the meeting. Warnings about disruptive conduct or comments may or may not be given prior to removal. Furthermore, certain disruptions of a public meeting are criminal acts as defined under NRS 203.090 and/or NRS 203.119, which may result in prosecution in appropriate cases.
Thank you very much. We'll now move to Madam Clerk. Do we have any public comment?
We do. We have quite a few people signed in, so the second name, if you will queue yourself up and be ready to speak. So first up, we have Rick Snow, followed by Drew Rebar.
Good morning. Richard Snow. I'm a resident of Sparks. In Lemon Valley, well, let's say I'm here optimistically to see what can be done today. In Lemon Valley, we have two very dire situations that need the county's attention. I've called code compliance on it on 3 different occasions. I was barred from the county for 2 years because they thought I was a little bit out of line. So now that I've served my 2 years in timeout, I'm here to address 440 Cameo Court. The person that lives there has filled the ditch in approximately 60 feet, and the other remaining 80 feet, he's put in rock and cement and tree stumps. So if the drainage is necessary, it will flood my property across the street. He also is building fence that's in excess of the 42 inches that's required by the county commission's or county code that says you cannot block the view by having a fence over 42 inches on a corner. Also, this man has built onto his house 3 different times, which are over the maximum for a no permit, and he has used substandard materials and hasn't had a building permit. That takes care of the first one. The second one is 350 Aristocrat Way. For 4 years ago, I went before the county assistant manager, Dave Serrano. For an hour and a half, we made up a folder. He handed it to Greg Herrera to get it taken care of. Well, Greg's since retired, and nothing's been done since. They said, oh, COVID is restricting us from doing that job. Well, COVID's come and gone. Now it's time for the county to take care of things. Now, the ADA might want to take offense to this. Oh, I don't know if she does. But when you send me a tax bill and I pay that bill, we have what's called an implied contract. So I paid my taxes. They're all current. Now I'd like the county to do their part by fulfilling their obligation and taking care of these two properties in a timely fashion. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Snow. We've noted your comments, and we'll have staff follow up on those particular items. Madam Clerk?
Drew Rebar, followed by Terry Brooks.
Good morning, Drew Rebar for the record. Let's talk about the library. I think you're talking about that today. It'll be talked about tomorrow in the Board of Trustees meeting. Isn't it magical how the money appeared? After all of the political signs that were posted all over the libraries, aren't public employees not supposed to be posting political signs all around the libraries like that? So ask yourselves as you vote today, I assume you're going to vote, how did the money magically appear? Why would we take money that's meant to build something long-term for the public, that should last for 50 plus years, and we're going to take that money that's supposed to last 50 plus years to benefit the public, and we're going to turn it into payroll for the next year? Is that logical to do? Is that what the public really wants? Are we here to benefit the public employees, or are we here to benefit the public that they are supposed to serve? You guys get to answer that question today. I sent you guys about 463 pages. I've got about 10,000 pages, 3,300 documents. The 463 pages are part of the lawsuit against the county for the library's actions. And what they really do show is they show that the librarians are not really librarians that are helping people find information, but they're more political partisans. Our libraries aren't really open to everybody anymore. Access to all of the public has been cut off, and if you're a member of a certain political group or you hold certain political beliefs, you'll be welcomed in the library. If you're not a member of those or hold those political views, you will be excluded from the library. For example, some of the documents that I didn't share with you is Kirk Cameron. He's got a reading program that he puts in the libraries. You know, Jeff Scott really laughed about those programs as he was spending taxpayer money on the LGBTQ programs. So why are the LGBTQ programs promoted, but Kirk Cameron's programs are pushed aside or criticized and laughed at by the librarians? You've got a group of people in these libraries that are not open to everybody. They're exclusive. And if they don't like you, they will exclude you. They will push you out. Well, and now you guys got sued. I never wanted to do that. I hope you guys would take that into consideration as you're looking at the budget. Should you really be spending the money this way? Are the libraries being used as they were intended to be used, or are they more of a political apparatus for some people that want to push their agenda? Thank you.
Terry Brooks, followed by Isla Arbateman.
Good morning. It's me, Terry Brooks, again. And today I'd like to speak to you about following a good example to poverty from yet another point of view. Once there was a really good man who cared so much about others, he always treated everyone as if they were sisters or brothers. There were several fishermen who left their boats to follow him. There was even a tax collector who left his job to follow him. But there was a rich young man who owned a lot of possessions. He found himself so wealthy that he never needed any professions. The good man told him to sell what he had and then to follow him, but he wasn't willing to do so, so he turned away from him. This good man was without a home and had no place to lay his head, but he had so many followers he could stay with them instead. He taught several of his friends, those who followed him, to go to help and teach other people and to stay with them. He told them several stories about people doing a good deed when they were somewhere and saw someone in need. And he told a story about a rich man and a poor man in need. The poor man wound up in good hands, but the rich man wound up in need. He spoke about a poor woman who gave what little she had, which in a way was a lot more than what the rich people had. He said that those who helped clothe others also helped to clothe him, but those who did not help to clothe others did not help to clothe him. He said those who invited strangers in also invited him in, but those who did not invite strangers in did not invite him in. This good man knew he wouldn't be there for long, so he sent out all who followed him, so they could then teach to others what he had taught to them. I would like to thank you all for listening to me today again, and I'd like to also thank you for inviting me in. Thank you.
Thank you.
Isla R. Bateman, followed by Rosie Zuckerman.
I have a couple things for this thing. Morning, Ilya Arbman for the record. Since the unfortunate failure of WC1, we have all been amazed, not surprised though, at the overwhelming show of love and support for our library system. We are here today to support the proposed county budget, item 7, which will fully fund the library for another year. We are also here, in the interest of directness and clarity, to try and settle the question of what happened with WC1, so that we can hopefully engage in more honest and productive work on supporting the library system moving forward. Let's begin with this crucial excerpt from today's budget. That's what I have here in orange. Quote, the largest source of Washoe County revenue is property tax. Property tax revenue is estimated to increase 7.2% across all funds. General fund property tax estimated to increase 9.4%, but this includes the reallocation of the expiring library expansion fund tax. We could not have a clearer statement of fact coming straight from the budgetary authorities responsible. The exact same tax revenue that would have gone to fund the library is now flowing directly into the county's general fund. Property taxes are not going down, and they would not have increased had WC1 passed. In other words, WC1 was not a new tax, period. We can certainly understand that there was confusion around this issue, as many public comments in these chambers over the past few months have also expressed. Part of this confusion was due to the wording of the ballot question itself. Unfortunately, ballot legalese can be obtuse and misleading. In fact, we put in a lot of work to dispel potential misunderstandings. Here is a quote from an op-ed from the October 2024 Reno News and Review, and I have that here. Just going to cover up this guy. Quote, this is not a new or an additional tax, but a renewal of a voter-designated allocation that gives the community an opportunity. This is not a new or an additional tax, but a renewal of a voter-designated allocation that gives the community an opportunity to determine how a portion of their taxes will be spent. If WC1 fails at the polls, this tax will still be collected, but rather than going directly to our libraries, it will revert to the county's general fund. That's what I have right here. How is it that we were able to figure this out? Simple. We care about our library system, and we were doing everything in our power to keep it funded and thriving. In this case, that meant talking to county staff, which we did and which anyone can do, to help us understand and spread correct information about the ballot question. Meanwhile, we were up against the now oft-quoted Washoe Republican Voter Guide, which falsely stated that WC1 will cause your property taxes to be increased. And I think we've seen that here. That's down here in orange. We were also up against Library Board Trustee Gianna Jacks, who told a December 2023 meeting of Republican Women of Reno that she, quote, asked Santa to please don't give us any new taxes for our library. Right now, the Washoe County Library Director is going to advocate for a new tax to keep his programs funded. He'll probably use that tax money to promote even more drag queen story hours if he's left to do so. What's important about this quote is not just that Jacks here is explicitly and plainly opposing WC1, a position in direct violation of her duty as a Library Board Trustee, which is to advocate for and fund the library. And it's not just her hateful targeting of queer joy in order to undermine the entire library system. What's important is that she is talking about WC1 in December of 2023. And Rosie is going to continue my comment.
Rosie Zuckerman, followed by Susan Misicki.
My name is Rosie Zuckerman. WC1 did not appear on the BCC agenda for possible inclusion on the ballot until June of 2024, so how did Gianna Jacks know about it? She was already a board member in December 2023 and had recently presided over the November 15th library board meeting where Director Scott gave a detailed presentation on the plan to renew the expansion fund. Here's an excerpt from the very beginning of the document Scott presented, quote, "On November 5th, 2024, Washoe County voters will decide whether to extend a 30-year tax dedicated to acquiring, constructing, improving, maintaining, and operating Washoe County library system. This is a renewal of a 30-year tax, not a new tax. An allotment of 2 cents for every $100 of assessed property goes directly to Washoe libraries. This is not an additional tax on Washoe County citizens. Our goal is to maintain the award-winning, outstanding library service Washoe County residents have come to enjoy." During the discussion that followed the presentation, the trustees paid particular attention to this point. Trustee Rogers at that meeting, quote, "It is going to be very imperative for the education piece on that tax, not only for supporters to understand, but obviously the layperson who doesn't. It is not an additional tax. If it goes away, it doesn't go down. This is a set aside from the tax assessment. I think that it's key in terms of people reading into it that it's key in terms of people not reading into it that it's a tax increase. It does not change the property tax." Here we have a trustee clearly aware of the potential confusion around the ballot measure, emphasizing the importance of spreading accurate information to educate voters. A month later, Trustee Jacks was telling a room of politically active people the exact opposite, claiming that this would be a new tax. In other words, she was lying. Jacks was, without a doubt, part of a planned and intentional campaign of misinformation aimed at defeating WC1 and defunding our libraries. Here's Commissioner Clark from the March 18th, 2025 BCC meeting. Quote, "The citizens voted to sunset the tax that was supposed to be sunsetted. We'll keep the library going, I'm sure, but we have to respect the votes. A tax override like this is never supposed to be sunsetted. Voters are unlikely to pass a tax that will last forever, so a 30-year time frame is one way of ensuring that the voters of the future get a chance to consider if the tax allocation is accomplishing its stated goals and whether to renew it. Is the library system thriving with its current funding? I think everything we've heard here, from incredible checkout statistics to deeply moving personal stories, to the simple fact of new libraries, library facilities, and expanding hours is a resounding yes. Voters had the opportunity to renew that funding allocation. I take particular issue with the statement, respect the votes. Before we respect the votes, we have to respect the voters. Is intentionally spreading false information about the ballot measure respecting voters? The BCC has full authority over the budget and can take many factors into consideration as it makes funding decisions. Yes, WC1 failed, but I think we can all see why, just as clearly as we can see that the community overwhelmingly wants a fully funded, fully staffed library system for many years to come. Thank you.
Thank you.
Susan Misaki, followed by Tara De Quiros.
Good morning. I am a lifelong library patron, and I'm here today to support funding for the library. Libraries have been an ongoing part of my life. As a kid growing up in a rural community, the monthly visit of the bookmobile was a highlight and provided access to a world outside of my small community. As a college student, before I carried a computer in my pocket, that was way before I carried a computer in my pocket, it was a place to study and access the information I needed to earn a degree and find a career. After moving to Washoe County more than 40 years ago, my library card kept me entertained, educated, and engaged with weekly visits to my local branch. During the pandemic, I discovered the convenience of Libby, the online app that allows 24/7 access to the library and all their ebooks from the comfort of your own home. And as a volunteer with the AARP Tax Aid Program, the libraries provide space needed for low-income seniors and others to access no-cost assistance in filing their taxes. The library is an essential service for so many of your constituents of all ages. And while I would prefer to support increases to the library budget, I am here today to support level funding for fiscal year 26. Thank you.
Thank you.
Tara De Quiros, followed by Gail Townsend.
Thank you to the commissioners for the opportunity to speak. I would like to thank you for ensuring that no librarians are going to lose their jobs right now. The newer librarians are at the point where they've been fully trained in serving the people of Washoe County, and it would have been a tragedy to lose them. Also, this is just a terrible time to lose your job right now. As I understand it, the budget was balanced at the cost of the new North Valleys Library, so I would ask the commissioners to work to find funding for that library. The North Valleys is the most underserved part of the county. Over the past year, we've heard countless stories from adults about how going to the library as a child changed their life. Either it was the only safe place they had to go, or they discovered a new world in books. We should all hope that that library magic can happen for more of the kids who live in the North Valleys, that they can have a library that they can walk to after school or get dropped off at on the weekend to discover the world of books or just have a safe place to hang out. Thank you.
Thank you.
Gail Townsend, followed by Candace Powell.
Gail Townsend, for the record, spelled Gail. Thank you. I also would like to thank the hard work of the county commissioners and the county staff in finding a way to keep the library funded at least until October. I don't think I have to repeat all the stories that you've heard about how important the library is. It is an essential service. It serves everyone in the community, cradle to grave, just about, with new programs addressed to newborn infants, all the way through helping senior citizens. I sympathize with the North Valley's predicament. Back in 1994, when the expansion fund came about, I live in Spanish Springs, and I had to watch libraries built in the Northwest and libraries built in the South Valleys. I had to watch Lazy 5 Park not be developed because money went to Bartley Creek. So I am very much in sympathy with the people in North Valleys. They deserve a better facility. I think that's all I have to say. I don't want to be repetitive, but thank you very much for your efforts to fund the library.
Thank you.
Candace Powell, followed by Ann Silver.
Good morning, Candace Powell for the record. I want to thank you for the temporary funding of our libraries using the original WC1 funds that have supported our libraries for decades. I'm here taking time away from work to speak on behalf of the many working families who can't be here at 10 a.m. on a Tuesday, but rely on our libraries, especially the extended hours and programs that make them accessible. Thank you for recognizing how essential these services are, and I hope this temporary funding is just the start to a long-term commitment to our libraries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ann Silver, followed by Nasim Jamnia.
Good morning, Madam Chair and Washoe County Commissioners. My name is Ann Silver, and I serve as the volunteer chair of the Washoe County Library Board. I was at your meeting last week and listened to many residents who addressed the need to maintain our library hours and personnel. The library system is a highly valued attribute in our community, and I want to see it thrive and provide the books, resources, learning opportunities, programs for adults and children, bilingual and legal assistance, technology, and other services to everyone who uses the many library locations. However, while I can't speak for my fellow trustees, our board has not fully vetted the library budget, nor do we have a comprehensive understanding if efficiencies may be found or greater effectiveness achieved. We know we have excellent librarians, all of whom have dedicated their expertise to managing library locations with their teams, and we applaud every one of them. However, with the failure of WC1, I request a few more weeks to fully explore the budget as submitted by the director to better understand library utilization, library hours, and other operational aspects of the library system, as these are duties of the board and our obligation is to understand and approve the budget. I request you allow us the time to do so we can ensure we do not unnecessarily impact 23 personnel, but fully understand the revenue and expenses in a more detailed manner. My 4 colleagues and I have spent over 75 hours in public meetings, but I'll be the first trustee to admit I need a greater understanding of how best to reconcile our budget and county budget deficits when balanced against the need for our libraries to serve all of our residents as desired and intended. Thank you.
Thank you.
Nasim Jamnia, followed by Suzanne Williams.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Nasim Jamnia. I'm a resident in District 3 and a local author. Like others, I'd like to share my appreciation for the library budget for fiscal year 2026 that will remain flat and therefore momentarily funded. I would, however, like to caution you against complacency and urge you not to take a backseat for the next 6 months until the Library Board of Trustees, who, at least in multiple public meetings, have demonstrated a fundamental lack of understanding of how the budget process works and how the budget process, library budget process in particular works, approaches you. My point here is actually to bring up what this funding costs us. Per the county manager's report, as we have heard, the remainder of the library expansion fund is why the library will be funded for the next fiscal year, as the use of the general fund to supplement the library budget is, quote, offset with the reallocation of expiring library expansion fund tax, end quote. Funding the library budget, which again, I thank you for, comes at the cost of a new library in North Valley in District 5, as we have heard, and I have to wonder why certain commissioners are not more concerned about this. If you haven't been to the North Valley's library, then you wouldn't know it's a small storefront and a shopping center that is well used by its surrounding community. As the area grows with more housing and business developments, it is essential we support the area with an adequately funded, independently housed public library. Yet there is rhetoric here at the County Commission as well as elsewhere that paints the public library as fiscally irresponsible and a hotbed for controversy. Don't lose the plot. This is not a Washoe County issue, but a national one. I will reiterate what I said last week. Across the nation, public libraries have been defunded and have become battlegrounds for ultranationalist totalitarian ideologies. Public libraries are some of our last third spaces left in our society, a place where anyone, regardless of background, identity, class, or political views, can access resources for free. Keeping our public libraries funded and accessible to all is a vital part of keeping our democracy alive in a time when it's deeply threatened. Discussions of pausing certain services must not encompass the library, which is an essential service for our communities. Calling for an independent audit when the library has successfully undergone countless county audits not only undermines the expertise and time of the county staff, but adds another unnecessary expenditure and plays into the hands of those who seek to ultimately defund the public library and deny Washoe residents, and more broadly, residents across the country, freedom of information. Savvy commissioners will appreciate that the upcoming 9.4% increase of general fund property tax revenue is in no small part due to the library expansion fund. Offsetting the county's budget comes directly at the cost of making sure our libraries flourish and not just survive. Let's not pretend that the 26 fiscal budget isn't a bandage and a temporary fix. I appreciate lean times are ahead of us and the hard work that you do. By prioritizing the library, you are prioritizing our democracy. Thank you.
Thank you.
Suzanne Williams, followed by Janet Butcher.
Good morning. I'm Suzanne Williams. This is my first time speaking at a public meeting like this, but it's hardly my first time speaking. I am a mom, a grandma, a former teacher, a school speaker. I've been everywhere that you can imagine, mostly in the Southern Plains, though, speaking to children, librarians, teachers, moms, and grandmas. And I can't tell you how important libraries are on a human level to every person who chooses to let them touch them. We have students whose lives have been changed by one book or one librarian who knows enough to hand that student the right book. I use libraries all the time. I use the South Valley's library a lot because Commissioner Clark is my commissioner. I drive north for 20 minutes to get there. And when I get there, I can use the meeting rooms. I can ask a librarian a question. If I can't find my book on reserve, somebody will find it for me. You've figured out by now I'm here to thank you for any funding that you give our libraries going forward. There have been lots of talk about what happened and why we're in this place. We all know what that is. But I'm here to tell you heartfelt that access to information, to learning, love of reading is the key to a strong and growing community and a fabulous county. Do not undercut these folks who do such a great job of supporting all of us. Obviously, I'm a senior, and I need the library. I got my first library card when I was 4 years old, and my sister had to teach me how to print my name so I could get it. You have the option to do that. How you do it is up to you, but thank you so much for fully funding our libraries as we move forward in this year and hopefully the next. Thank you.
Thank you.
Janet Butcher, followed by Meredith Ford.
Janet Butcher for the record. I was very happy to see that WC1 was put on the ballot. A sunset means it sunsets, it goes away. And anytime you do a sunset, it just came up at the legislature, Clark County was trying to do something about a sunset. And it was brought out in the legislation sessions that if something sunsets, it has to be a new thing. So it was new. And no, maybe it was not how the money was allocated, but we're not being mandated to take that money and put it into a certain thing. So it went on the ballot, thanks to Commissioner Andriola. She brought it up and said we should let the people vote. The people voted. It wasn't that they didn't understand. Somebody said that it was rewritten as it was in the first place. So how did people not understand it? Plus, I believe that there were pros and cons, and there were people that wrote the pros. They didn't understand what they wrote. They've gotten up here and said, we didn't understand. Yeah, they understood. As far as somebody needed to call out Trustee Jacks, the first time that it was ever talked about that WC1 was going to come up, it was brought up in a trustee meeting by Frank Perez. I believe some of her comments were out of context as far as what she said about taxes going up. Even our chair of Ms. Hill has said, wait, it's time to talk taxes. In fact, she thought it was so cute to do an April Fool's joke about taxes going up. So yeah, taxes are going to be going up. We have budget problems. Also, I don't know if I can get this in there, but I listened to a library staff member misinformed legislation about the type of books that were being challenged in the libraries. People have been gavelled down, meetings have been stopped, and people have run from the dais because of the content being read, but yet they stood up at legislation and said there was nothing wrong with any of the books being provided to underage people. Thank you.
Thank you. Meredith Ford, followed by Von Galen Zarcone.
I'm here to speak in favor of refunding the library, and I am presenting a program that the library offers that you might not know about. It's a book group sponsored by South Valley's Library. We meet once a month, about 15 of us, sometimes more. Often a book group is an excuse for good friends to get together to relax with a glass of wine, spend a few minutes on the book, and an hour or more sharing of personal stories or issues. But because we are at the library, neither of those things happen. Because we're at the library, there's an air of formality about the group, like taking a class together. We make a circle of small tables where we can put our notes about the book we've just read next to our water bottles. After a few minutes for business, we dig into the book. We take turns being leader each month and try to take turns speaking, but we get pretty excited, praising and criticizing and arguing and reading good lines aloud, questioning, sharing opinions, and laughing, of course. But because we're at the library, we stay with the book and its themes rather than wandering into side topics. Although it's a welcoming place and the librarians are always friendly and helpful, there's a serious sense of valuing and respecting books. We do that by considering the books carefully for the hour and a half that we are together. Basic to the book group's success is the library. Before joining the book group, each of us was a serious library user. Each saw the notice by the, quote, so literary book group, and was drawn to the idea of book discussions. Each joined separately, so we came to talk about books, not primarily to socialize. We've become friends, of course, over the years, but mostly we don't spend lots of time with each other outside the book group. Our connection is through the library. It grounds us. And I'm pleased to be part of this little group, and it's one of those things that a lot of people don't know that the library office offers, but it's extremely valuable. Thank you.
Thank you.
Von Galen Zarcone, followed by Penny Brock.
Good morning. You've made the unfortunate mistake of giving me a microphone. Von Galen Zarcone for the record. Thank you, commissioners, for your tireless work, everything that you are doing, the many hours you spend listening to all of us. I come before you as a lifelong lover of all libraries, from my very small hometown to Washoe County for the last 20-something years. Thank you all for being champions of our library in every way that you're possibly able, for championing this community asset that really does serve us in so many ways. For myself, it is learning about all of the things that are out there in the world, and it's not just looking at things I already know, love, think, and feel. It's looking at a bigger picture. For over 30 years, that 2-cent allocation has been groundbreaking and visionary. It has fueled programs, resources, and spaces that have made our county stronger, smarter, and more connected. And now, as we enter this new chapter, one no longer bound by this specific allocation, I'm incredibly grateful for this board's willingness to continue and improve that legacy in bold new ways. Thank you for finding a temporary funding solution, the one you've already identified. Now we have time and space to thoughtfully shape what comes next. And I believe wholeheartedly that you will continue to invest in our community in beautiful ways, in our libraries, not just because of what they've done, but because of what they make possible for every person in this county. Thank you for your leadership and for your continued commitment to our libraries.
Thank you.
Penny Brock, followed by Trista Gomez.
Penny Brock for the record. Good news. Doge, out of Washington, D.C., Elon Musk Doge, has launched a new branch in the state of Nevada. At a time when public trust in government spending is at a historic low, Doge Nevada is stepping up to investigate and expose waste, fraud, and abuse, regardless of party or department, the agency said. The agency will rely on a combination of public data from the Nevada State Controller's Office, Nevada's Open Finance Portal, and open government databases, as well as whistleblower tips. This will include cities, counties, school boards. Taxpayers work too hard to see their money wasted on bloated bureaucracy and mismanaged programs, said Brandon Davis, president of Doge Nevada. Our job is to bring that spending into light so Nevadans know where their dollars are going and can demand better. Doge Nevada has launched in Washoe County. The other thing that's happened breaking news, Trump signs executive order to stop the fraud. He activated quantum voting systems. Your ROV better get ready for this. What's unfolding now is not Another political struggle. It's a controlled demolition of the deep state's final weapon, election fraud. On March 5th, 25, President Trump signed the executive order officially mandating proof of citizenship for all federal voting, but beneath the headlines, something far more powerful was activated. The long-hidden quantum voting system, silent, secure, and military-grade, designed for one purpose, ending the era of stolen elections. 3 days after the order, panic hit Washington. The Democrats rushed to federal court, demanding the right to keep non-citizens on the voter rolls. Let that sink in. They're no longer hiding behind slogans or procedural tricks. Now they're openly defending illegal voting as a civil right because they know if the fraud stops, so does their power. And this time, Trump isn't playing the defense. So I just bring this to your attention that you have this to look forward to. So I don't know what you've put in the budget for elections. I look to see it, but it's not there. We as taxpayers have a right to know how much is allotted for our elections in this next fiscal year. Thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Gomez?
Good morning, Trista Gomez. I am a fourth generation Nevadan. I work and pay local wages at my business. I help local buyers buy houses, and we are in fact facing a tax increase, several. So while I am a strong supporter of the libraries and always have been my whole life, as well as my kids, said it before, the county in general has made decisions that require some consideration overall for the budget. So you guys have the Corn Ferry study. It raised every county employee to the top of their field. That was unsustainable. There's no revenue to support it, right? There was that. And we've seen, now we're looking at the SB 319. It's the fire assessment, right? And so we're looking at that. We're looking probably at raising all of those firefighters up to Reno levels because they're the highest paid, and I doubt Reno's going to take a cut. We are in fact facing a budget, your county words, structural severe deficit. So here we've got, let's see if we can get this. $74,000 is our median income based on the Bureau of Labor Statistics, but this $51,000, that is what ZipRecruiter talks about with the average wage, and you can see that here, right? So we're looking at those kinds of numbers. PERS just required a huge increase because while taxpayers don't get a guaranteed pension, Washoe County employees do. Any PERS employee does, right? So you guys are going to raise the taxes on local buyers who already can't afford to buy houses, per your report, and you are going to make sure that county, which I'm not actually all the way completely against any of this, right? But we have to, as a county, just like families do, just like businesses do, just like corporations do, we have to make decisions, restructure, cut costs, when we're looking at raising costs and raising taxes on local families that will even further inhibit their ability to buy houses and live in this economy where their family lives, where they've grown up in, and where they cannot buy a house. These are important decisions. Some of these are some of the numbers. I'll go through, I have more time on another meeting, but we're looking at just the PERS alone in fire. If you look at a $98,000 fire, is $56,000 a year, just PERS. Just the PERS for one employee for one fire. We have to look at our budget in a whole and stop burdening taxpayers who cannot afford to live in the area with their families anymore.
Madam Chair, there's nobody else signed in, but I do have an email that was submitted that will be placed on the record.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. I would like to give this board just a 10-minute break so we can get back into the meat of the agenda. So we'll come back at 10:55 and we'll see y'all in a few minutes. It is 10:55. I will call this county commissioners meeting back to order, and I will move into item 4. Manager Brown.
Item 4 is commissioners and county managers' announcements, reports, and updates to include boards and commissions updates, requests for information, or topics for future agendas.
Manager Brown, do you have anything for us?
I do not, Madam Chair.
Okay, Vice Chair Herman. Okay, Commissioner Garcia and Commissioner Andriola.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have more that I'm going to expand on this when we get to item number 7, but just in keeping in line with my request during the last meeting to have an independent third-party audit of the library through the audit committee's oversight. I'd also like to request that we provide a policy that recommends that essentially the library board of trustees would officially vote on a budget as a recommendation to Washoe County before it comes to Washoe County. So when the time permits, I know there's a lot of deadlines that are happening, statutory requirements, compliance. So I'm not trying to complicate that, but I think it's important that we have that policy in writing, and I'll defer to legal to look at where that lies in terms of whether it's the BCC or where that goes. But I just don't think we should be accepting any board. I serve on the Northern Nevada Public Health Board, and we officially vote to recommend that a budget go to Washoe County, and I would expect that that be the same with the library. But I will expand more when the time is right. I have one more thing. Sorry.
No
So can we talk about water? I feel that if anybody really wants to spend any time talking about water, I'd probably ask that we have some time to talk, because I feel like I'm getting really an in-depth dunking of water. I went to Tampa. I'd like to give kudos to John Enlow, who received a national award when I did go to Tampa, and I had the pleasure of going with Commissioner Clark and myself and others recently to Southern California and look at actually water reuse. I don't know if anybody, I'm not going to keep on going with this, but because I will. Nevada is the #1 state in the nation, uses 85% of its water. I think that's something to be proud of. I think the tour of Orange County, along with some of the tours I took in Tampa, and to see One Nevada actually highlighted with what we're doing here. I serve on the TUMWA board, and I'm going to echo these comments when that board meeting happens this week. But I just thought I'd share. It's really amazing, something to celebrate. I've lived here a long time, and we always hear about water, and I can tell you, I think that we're blessed in terms of the geography, the topography have, all the aquifers, and how much water, and the incredible talent. John Enlow's award was a national award, and everybody knew this gentleman. He is like the water guy, and so it's really something to be proud of, and I just like to thank everybody who works in that space, because when we turn on the tap, we just expect water to come out, and I think the quality that we have, the reuse of what we have, and where we're going with One Water Nevada is a lot to be celebrated. So thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Andriola. Commissioner Clark.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I've got a lot of comments. I'm going to work those into the rest of the meeting, especially when we get to the fiscal year 2026 budget presentation. I've got many things I want to talk about that at that time. I do want to comment about Ann Silver. One of the things that people need to realize is one of the words she said is she's a volunteer. She gives of herself to sit on this board. She's the chair of the library board. I think we should honor her request to pump the brakes a little bit here and find out exactly what she's going to discover as she delves into the budget. And, you know, she's got, many people may or may not realize it, Ann is a licensed attorney here in the state. She ran the State Department of Employment, the Dieters, for a number of years. She's the head of the Chamber of Commerce, very, very smart lady, very fiscally responsible person, and I think we should allow her to get into that budget and then come back to us and help us do our job with proper information from somebody who gets an opportunity to review that budget in its totality, employment, hours of operation, and anything else that's involved with the library. I think we owe it to the citizens to listen to her recommendations after she's had a chance to study that. So I want to put that on the record. Next, I had opportunity to meet with the head of the Human Services office the other day, along with the assistant county manager, who was acting as the county manager at the time, and I asked some questions about the tragedy that's happened out in Cold Springs. I've been contacted by several neighbors who said they've, on a regular basis, contacted Child Protective Services about this incident, and they have the feeling, their feeling, not mine, they know more about it than I do. They're the ones who made the calls, allegedly made the calls to about this situation. And when I asked the HSA people about it, I was told that it's against the law for me to know that. They can't share the fact whether they had or hadn't had contact with this family or this individual or this address. So I got to thinking about that. You know, I hear that just about every time I ask a question around here. Oh, it's against the law to tell you. So from this point forward, anyone who's a department head who tells me that, and if they're not an attorney and they're not an attorney acting for the county, I want them to provide me the NRS statute and their interpretation of it, and then I'm going to take it to the DA, not the DA's assistant, but the DA himself, and have him give me a written evaluation of what that is. So I'm not going to be stopped with somebody's interpretation, and I'm not calling anybody out. I'm just saying anyone can have their opinion about what an NRS statute means. I want to hear it from the authority, and in this case, the authority for the county is the person in charge of that particular office who gives us the legal interpretation. So I wanted legal interpretations from the committees to me to be run by the other department. Chris Hicks heads up the. Can't even think of the word right now. District Attorney's Office. I'm so riled up about this that I keep getting these kind of answers. I can't tell you this. Recently had somebody from the DA's office. I can't tell you who works from home. I don't want to know their name. I probably know their name. I'm asking questions that I already have the answer to. I'm just trying to verify it. You know, many people, we may have many people that are working from home. I don't think that's fair to the other folks that have to work on their job here, who have to be here. The people who drive snow plows, the deputy sheriffs, the firefighters, the people who actually have to be here. I mean, what kind of equality is this when certain people are allowed to work other places and in the luxury of their homes and out of the county, out of the state in some cases? I just wanted to know how many people are involved in that particular segment of the county employees, and I'm told that, again, it's against the law for me to know that. HR says it's against the law for me to know that. I'm an elected official here. If it's against the law for me to know about this, how can I possibly ever make a decision, a rational decision about anything? Every time I ask a question around here, it's against the law. Anytime I ask to put something on the agenda, it isn't relevant, it's redundant. We don't want to do that. So from this point on, and I've been building up to this, I ask questions and I get answers that have nothing to do with the question I ask. You're insulting to come back with some some story that has nothing to do with the question I asked. So I just want to get that on the record. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I am just wanting to remind the folks who I represent in Incline Village and Crystal Bay that we have some upcoming engagement opportunities on the Tahoe Area Plan. We have a webinar coming up here on Wednesday, April 16th at 5:30 p.m. and the website has that link on a Zoom. And we also have online surveys, and so those are due May 2nd. So you have a lot of opportunities to get involved, and then we have 2 workshops in person, one on April 21st at the Incline Village Library at 5:30, and one on the 30th at the Chateau at 5:30. So check out the draft documents, and hopefully you can get involved in that. So with that, we'll move into our donations. Commissioner Garcia, if you could help us with that.
Of course, Madam Chair. Today, I would like to thank the May Foundation, the May Arboretum Society for their generous in-kind donations, as well as the individual constituents who stepped up to help our regional parks. That includes Mr. Glenn Atkinson, Mr. Peter Ting, Mr. Timothy Terrell, and thank you to all those folks for contributing to the county.
Thank you very much. Is that in the form of a motion?
Yes.
Okay, looking for a second on donations.
I'll second.
Thank you, Commissioner Andriola. And Madam Clerk, is there any public comment on donations?
There's nobody signed in.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, please say nay. And I think that motion, it's up on your screen.
Commissioner Clark?
It was on my screen.
Okay. Are you an aye or an nay?
Aye.
And that motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much. We're now moving into our consent items. Do any board members have questions or comments on the consent? Yes, Commissioner Garcia.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As I've done in the past with items related to the library, I just wanted to make a quick disclosure that my sister works for the Washoe County Library System, but in consultation with the District Attorney's Office last week, I'm not required to abstain or recuse myself from voting on this item, and the item I'm referencing is 6B1.
Thank you for the disclosure. Any other comments or questions on the consent? Commissioner Clark, are you trying to sign in or?
No.
Okay. Well, Madam Clerk, is there any public comment on consent?
There is. I have an email to place on the record, and we have Penny Brock signed in.
Is this there? Thank you. Penny Brock for the record. I've comments on under this consent item 6B1 quickly. The library is getting a $36,000 grant. I don't think that was figured in with your budget proposal, and it should be. Secondly, the library was audited. I don't know if you looked at it, but it appears that the library director did not pass with flying colors. There were many questions about the way they're handling cash. Now, anybody that works in the world of business, the bottom line, customer service and the money. We as taxpayers want responsibility by every department in our county that we, the taxpayers fund. The library is no exception. He's having his review tomorrow. I am hoping that Ann Silver and the board are looking at this audit report. It wasn't signed off by any board member, library board members. And I liked Commissioner Andriola's idea to have a policy. But my question is, Jeff Scott signed off. Why didn't a library board member sign off on this audit report? We have no idea if our library board even received a copy of this audit report. I'm looking at who it was sent to. I do not find the name of any of our library board members. I'm wondering why that was omitted. This is very serious. These little details are serious, and that's why we've got Doge Nevada working in Washoe County, because of all kinds of things like this, all these questions. We want transparency and accountability. Why aren't we getting it? Why not? We have a right for transparency and accountability, and managers of every department or directors, whatever you want to call them, that they are being fiscally responsible, that they're being transparent and accountable, and they're handling everything appropriately, whether it's the customers they serve, accountability to you, the board, and to the taxpayers. We want accountability for everything. That's what it's all about. Thank you.
Thank you.
There's nobody else signed in.
Okay, I am looking for a motion on the consent.
I'll move to approve.
Thank you, Commissioner Andriola, and I've got a second from Commissioner Garcia. Any questions on that motion from the board? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, please say nay. And that motion passes unanimously. We're now moving into item 7. Manager Brown.
Item 7 is a recommendation to acknowledge the status report and possible direction to staff on the county manager's recommended fiscal year 2026 budget, which runs from July 1st, 2025 through June 30th, 2026, with estimated appropriations of approximately $1,064 million, which incorporates board priorities of funding for existing contractual obligations, supplies, utilities, personnel costs, capital improvements, and operations, and maintaining the county's assets and infrastructure needs, and direct the county manager to return to the Board of County Commission with the certified tentative and final budget for adoption at a public hearing to be scheduled on May 20th, 2025. And I will be joining our Chief Financial Officer, Abby Jacobin, our Budget Manager, Lori Cook, and Assistant County Manager, Dave Solaro, at the podium.
Thank you.
Okay, for the record, County Manager Eric Brown and Commissioners, this morning, we share the County Manager's recommended budget for fiscal year 2026. I'll start with some opening comments on the process and how we got here in terms of making sure we're in alignment with our strategic plan objectives. Then I will invite the other members of the team to come up and get into the meat of what's in the budget. We'll finish with next steps and, of course, entertain any questions that you might have. The first is, as you all know, our strategic plan drives the prioritization that we use in setting our budget objectives. This year is no different than what we've done before. We met in January at our strategic plan workshop, and at that time the board affirmed our focus on primarily 3 areas: mental health, senior services, and infrastructure. And as we look at this budget, we have been respectful of those priority areas. Following the strategic plan workshop in late January, we accepted budget input from the 24 departments. We then set up individual briefings with each of you as commissioners to take a look at the first pass of the budget At that time, you made it very clear to us as staff that you wanted to see us take a more aggressive stance in terms of mitigating our expense, particularly our expenses, to address the budget deficits that we're facing. So we then went back and sharpened our pencils, and the budget we bring to you today is the output reflecting guidance that we've received from you. At the top of the list, we understood that we need to maintain our focus on services as best we can. And as we do that, we want you to know that we are sharpening our focus on key performance indicators to help us make sure that we're not only focusing on the right thing, but also focusing on the quality of services that we provide. We're committed to our employees to keep our employees working. So we heard very clearly from the commission that you didn't want to see layoffs or furloughs. Third, we want to use our reserves wisely, particularly in terms of stabilizing expenditure growth. We heard from the majority of the commission that you didn't want to see new taxes reflected in this budget, and so we have not done that. We did have discussions with all of you around the potential use of the supplemental government services tax, and the feedback overall was not favorable towards that, so you don't see that reflected in the numbers we're sharing with you today. In terms of general considerations, obviously the national and economic impacts from federal policy are still unfolding. You're all very aware that in terms of federal grants and funding, even for things that have been long-standing grant sources, we are seeing some of those funds being clawed back or not made available going forward. So as we look towards the future, we're very mindful of that. Again, it fuels even more our focus on sustaining cost reductions as best we can, because the revenue side of the equation is very unstable right now. In terms of revenues, as you're all aware, property tax is still our largest revenue source. It's about 52% of general fund revenues. But with property tax abatements, that has a chilling effect on our ability to use those resources going forward. C-tax is about 32% of general fund revenues, and then we have a modest amount of interest income. Cost inflation, personnel is our biggest cost. You're all fully aware of that. About 80% of the general fund expenditures are in people. So if we're talking about mitigating expenses, no way to do that at a meaningful level without taking some measures to control our personnel costs. Services and supplies, closer to 17% of general fund uses, 20% of general fund expenditures. And then we have general fund transfers that support other governmental entities, such as the health district, et cetera. So at this point, I'm going to hand it over to, I think, Lori Cook, who will come up and get into the forecast that we're faced with.
Good afternoon. For the record, Lori Cook, Washoe County Budget Manager. So when we're talking about sustainability and forecasts, this chart is what was presented to the board in January, so January 14th of 2025. This is kind of the do-nothing approach, especially when we look at the uses or expenditures and transfers out. There have been true-ups since that January meeting related to property tax. We did get those final numbers from the state at the end of March, as well as Flattening CTAX, there have been some challenges getting CTAX information from the state due to their modernization of their systems of how they collect and then distribute that data. So we've taken that into consideration. So this is kind of where we started, right? So I'd like to look at where we started January. And this is what represents the recommended budget at this time. So when we look at the column that says fiscal year 2026 tentative, that's what we submit to the state as a tentative budget. It reflects the manager's recommended budget. But you can see that the revenues and transfers in have been trued up, as well as the expenditures and transfers out. These include they include the manager's recommendations. Of course, there are quite a few of those, but we can see, if you don't mind, I'll flip back. We go from, this is just not good, I don't know a better word for it, to being within policy level. But again, we can see continued deficits, which tend to, I don't want to say par for the course, but this is not brand new. So we need to look at those structural deficits. We really did, as explained in January, the PERS increase really, there was a fairly substantial increase 2 years ago. It's every 2 years that the PERS board, which is a separate board, so it's not the state, it's not the county, they use their actuarial rates. So for the fiscal year 24 and 25, we had an increase, and we're going to see another increase for 26 and 27. So this reflects that. So what is in the recommended budget, or what is the recommendation? So no new positions in any fund. The general fund obviously is the largest, it's about 50% of the total budget, but there are multiple funds that house people, senior services, Northern Nevada Public Health, Animal Services. There's a bunch of special revenue funds. Some of our enterprise and internal service funds also fund people. And we want to make sure that there's sustainability across, because the same kind of cost pressures, personnel, inflation that impact the general fund also impact most special revenue funds or funds with people. Hiring freeze with a vacancy review process established. My understanding is that process is being worked on, the mechanics of it worked out. The anticipated savings associated with that would be approximately $2 million through the end of this fiscal year, and about 11.3 for next fiscal year. No reclassifications resulting in permanent cost increases. So there might be, I'll use an office specialist to a senior office specialist or something. We're working with HR and HR to work with the departments and say, okay, how can we get the work within the spec and look at what we're doing and prioritize the things that we're doing rather, because once that reclassification happens, it's permanent. It's a permanent increase. As there's been much discussion, library budget is recommended to be flat, and there are separate discussion and slide that Assistant County Manager Solero will walk us through. An increase in general fund transfer for the public, Northern Nevada Public Health or the health district, same separate conversation, separate slide, and as well as increase in general fund transfers to the roads fund. We've had conversations about the roads fund for the past few years, about the instability or unsustainability, and when that budget is flat and there are no other resources coming or sufficient resources coming in, they simply do less. So when you have a flat budget, instead of, and I don't want to, I'm telling you, I'm making this up. Instead of doing 100 miles, we do 50 miles, or we do 70 miles. That's the way that gets handled. And so then there's less road miles that we're able to accomplish. The special district funds reduction back to pre-COVID or pre-pandemic levels. ARPA funded positions is necessary, funded with ARPA interest, and frequent updates and briefings with commissioners, and or during board meetings throughout fiscal year 26. We're looking into timing for that to make sure that we have the most current and update information after we close out the month. And then as we're tracking on personnel, to get that data, the most current data, to the board, so that we're not too far behind of what the the situation is. So the idea is that with the recommendations, we should be able to see fairly quickly, and when I say quickly in finance terms, quickly, month, 6 weeks, in those intervals to see if what we think is happening is actually happening. If we're meeting those targets, if we're meeting those goals, if not, what are our challenges or what are the roadblocks? And the stabilization aspect of it, I think we're probably all have been familiar with, well, if we don't necessarily know 3 years from now, but we see the trend coming, we try to prepare for it now. It's better, in reality, it's better, it's best practice actually, but it's better from fiscal management as well, to address it as early as you can. And then, then you can pivot as necessary if things get better or if things don't get better. Then you have other places or other plans, other things to do. So that is a little bit of the background under as far as the why. Why does this plan look like this? Now I'm going to turn it over to Assistant County Manager Dave Solero to talk about the Library, Public Health, and Roads funds.
Good morning, Commissioners. For the record, Dave Solero, Assistant County Manager. As you're all aware, the Library Expansion Fund was put into place to adequately account for the source and use of the 2 cents that were dedicated of the property tax. However, by vote, will no longer occur in the upcoming fiscal years. The fund contains a fund balance. That fund balance can only be utilized for the reason for which it was collected. So this budget recommends that the fund balance plus a $1.3 million general fund allocation creates a flat budget for the library. Overall, flat $18.4 million budget. Additionally, the Library Board of Trustees and the Library Director are being asked to work with Washoe County Budget and Washoe County Manager's Office to provide an updated service delivery model for the library system that provides the library services our community can afford. That's what's listed here on the third bullet, is to really understand what it is by October 1st of 2025, so that we can provide that budget request moving forward. As you heard, the commissioners have had some discussion regarding that, as well as the Library Board of Trustee Chair. So we'd like to move forward with that plan.
Dave, sorry to interrupt, but
Sure.
Just historically, for context, and it's not anywhere in these documents, what have we always put into the general fund for the library?
So the general fund portion of the library, and about $14.4 million is roughly.
So
the
we're
general
adding
fund
another
piece. So
million?
There's about a $4.4 million
Okay.
or so, $4 million that has come out of the library expansion fund to pay for specific things at the library, whether it's personnel to expand hours or books to expand the collection. And so that's the funding essentially that we're trying to work through. Really, what is that? And there's about let's call it $3.4 million of fund balance. So we're going to add some to that to make it a flat budget in fiscal year 26.
So the total library allocation, which I'm having a hard time finding in here, is 15 from the general fund, 15 million, 15.3 million.
So the total allocation for library budget will be $18.4 million next fiscal year, which is the same as what it is this fiscal year.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep. Northern Nevada Public Health, again, is also being recommended as a no reduction, no increase flat budget at $35.4 million. So ongoing discussions with Washoe County and Northern Nevada Public Health finance staff have been productive. However, more work needs to be done to completed to understand and address future sustainability concerns, as Northern Nevada Public Health also has a structural deficit within their fund. So additional pressures related to uncertainty around federal funding exist along with rising costs and a historically flat general fund transfer. So due to the future year concerns related to the structural deficit, a recommended increase in the general fund transfer to support Northern Nevada Public Health is being recommended at $1 million in the budget for a total general fund transfer to the Northern Nevada Public Health of $10.5 million. So historically, it's been around $9.5 million, and so we're saying we need to increase that to $10.5 million. Now, the Roads Fund, I could probably speak on this for days, and so I'll try to be concise with this. But the Roads Fund is a special revenue fund created during the last large economic downturn to essentially segregate and show the public where the funding from fuel tax goes into our budget. Prior to this, it went to the general fund and was spent out. So this is a way to contain those costs, to really show that the fuel tax is actually going towards the thing that it's being collected for, which is operation and maintenance of the roads. So out of the entire, every gallon of gasoline sold, Washoe County receives a little over 3.2 cents for the specific use of operation and maintenance of our road system. There are RTC and the City of Reno and City Sparks, lots of people, the state utilize fuel tax. The piece that's specific in the Nevada Revised Statutes equates out to about 3.2 cents. A little over that, goes out 3 or 4 digits. So that is for the operation and maintenance, and that is everything from roadside ditches to the shoulder, to the pavement, to the signage, to the striping, to trimming trees that grow into the right-of-way. These are the things that are safety improvements that we create. Additionally, a big piece of that is the pavement maintenance. So Washoe County has 2,683 acres of pavement for unincorporated Washoe County. That's roughly the size of the land between I-580 on the west, McCarran on the south and east, and the Truckee River on the north. So if you think graphically of what that looks like, that's the amount of space that is maintained for pavement within unincorporated Washoe County. The board actually has a financial policy related to the pavement condition index. That is 73. Our current pavement condition is slipping to 69, and that's there's a whole slew of reasons for that. As you look at the, what does pavement condition index mean? Here are some visual samples of what that means. So, a fairly new road, brand new, is going to have a PCI of 100. As it starts to age, we do some, get 3 or 4 winters under us, starts to slip down into the 85. Further goes along. The chart there, so we've got everything color coded here. The green and blue, that's where we like to keep our pavement, in the good to very good category. It's less expensive to maintain at that point. Roughly runs about 55 cents a square foot to be able to maintain that. Keeps our road condition fairly high. Most of the roads that we spend our time and effort on are the residential roadways. Some of those major collectors are handled with RTC funds. But it's certainly, as inflation occurs, that 55 cents, let's say, stays stagnant. Actually, it doesn't stay stagnant. It increases the amount of square footage we can actually do starts to shrink. And so Lori had started to mention that as time goes by, we have a finite amount of funding, the costs increase, the amount of square footage we can maintain starts to slow down. That kicks our pavement condition index lower. Unfortunately, when the index goes lower, at the bottom you'll see that our current condition, 67% of the roadways are in the fair condition. That fair condition comes with a cost of about 83 cents per square foot, up to $4.44 per square foot to maintain, to get it back to that very good. And so over time, as we can do less and less, the actual maintenance categories start to fall. So we're projecting right now at the current funding levels, the current inflation, those types of things, by 2044, instead of 66% of our roadways being in the fair condition, that same amount roughly will be in the failed condition. That is very expensive at about $5.33 to reconstruct those things. Now, the graph with the blue bars simply shows that maintenance gap is increasing. So that deferred maintenance grows over time because of those things that we're talking about. So we're recommending an additional $5 million into the roads special revenue fund to keep up with some of that need that we've got while we continue to to work towards what is the most sustainable funding source. How do we deal with that ongoing need to maintain that asset? Roadways are very important to our community. In fact, one of the first things that anybody in unincorporated Washoe County does when they leave their house is they drive on Washoe County roadways. And again, this is not just the pavement, but it's everything associated with it, the plowing, the safety, all of those types of things. So with that, I will turn it back over to Lori.
Hello, for the record again, Lori Cook, Washoe County Budget Manager. So when we go back to general fund revenues and sources, we have for the 26 budget, $539.2 million. Overall revenues going up 6.2%. And that is made up of weighted measures. So property tax increase of 9.4%, that does include the reallocation of the expiring 2 cents. It also includes a portion of the debt service rate that was adjusted downwards as we have pay off certain our ad valorem based or ad valorem backed property tax backed debt service payments. It's not zero, but we can adjust that rate. C-tax increase for the current year, so going through June 30th, 25, we're estimating flat. What we've seen right now, year to date, is about a $3 million reduction compared to prior year. However, there are outstanding items at the Department of Taxation as to releasing some funds and some things that they found when they switched, modernized their systems. So whether that's a true gauge or whether that's a timing issue, we don't know. I've attempted to get clarification from taxation and haven't been very successful. And we also do not have any taxable sales by the NAIC codes. We don't have any of that data since November, December. So we don't even know what's driving. Are we seeing an increase in building materials? Are we seeing a decrease in motor vehicles? We don't know because we don't have the data and it's not available. So all of that to say we're being as conservative or being conservative in our estimates. So flat through the rest of this year, so equal with fiscal year 24, and then 2% increase in going forward. When we put both of those together, so when we look at 9.4% increase in property tax and a 2% increase in consolidated tax, that weighted increase of revenues is 5.5%. So we have a large number in one area, but that area is about half of what we receive, so it is weighted. Charges for services increase about 9.8%. The majority in that category is the general fund overhead, that indirect cost allocation that gets charged to the special revenue funds and the proprietary funds. The licenses and permits are what we're seeing is flat. And in this miscellaneous increase of 6.7% is the true up based on pooled investments. So when it comes to unrealized gains, realized and unrealized gains, we don't budget those. Those are, I don't want to use the incorrect term, book values. So if I have my house and I say this week it's worth whatever, $600,000, next week it's worth $500,000, I haven't lost $100,000 because I haven't sold it. But on paper, right, that investment is worth less, or vice versa. It goes from 600 to 700,000. You don't have that extra, but it's the recognition of the value. So those are unrealized gains and losses. URGL, we don't budget for those. They do get booked. We don't budget. It's difficult until you're towards the end of the fiscal year to estimate those. But that's in that. Pooled interest itself is about 1% of total revenues. So I guess we could triple it if we had really good results, and it would definitely help, but it's not going to solve the overall deficit. So the 6.7% is going up, but it's a smaller amount it's going up. Here are the appropriations in the general fund by function. There are a slew or a few slides in the appendix. I don't want to, divide attentions, but so there's different information starting, I guess slide 25. I could be wrong. So these are the the functional category, like public safety, judicial, general government. We get those questions a lot. However, this is not necessarily the outline of by department. Those would be on slides 30 and 31. So the appendix, if you will, of this presentation does have that information available. So it talks about public safety and outlines the departments and what their total appropriations are. So the functional is, I would say personally, it's been something that's been the most asked. So we're prioritizing that for the presentation on this slide. When we talk about other funds, these are other governmental funds. So we speak about these quite frequently. We have total appropriations, so we have health, we have library expansion. Because that has been a topic of conversation or top of mind, we can see, well, we're not assuming any revenues next year because there's not a tax allocation associated with it, but we're assuming spending the remaining fund balance, that $4 million. We have animal services, homelessness fund, senior services. There are a lot of special revenue funds through to our debt funds. And these are the revenues, other sources, appropriations, and then whether there's building or using fund balance. More detail, which goes across, well, is it property taxes? Where's the money coming from? Where's it being spent on salaries and wages? Those are also in the appendix, so those are slides 32 and 33. So this is a roll-up to be presented for just oversight and brevity. Capital funding, of course, infrastructure is a huge thing, and not all of the capital projects, actually few of them recently are actually building new things, right? So it's our maintenance, it's our infrastructure maintenance. They're projects that need to be funded. So this is the total budget of the $44.2 million. Now, if we compare capital budgets of the current recommended for 26 versus the fiscal 25 or the current fiscal year budget, you will see a large decline in that budget. To be more accurate, we're changing how we budget in the capital funds. So in the past, we would say, okay, we think we're going to finish this project. It's $200,000. We think we're going to spend $100,000. We budget $100,000. So you have your full budget on both sides of the fiscal year. Then what happens is we actually spend $75,000 or we actually spend $150,000. Well, now your next year budget is not balanced. So then there are a lot of things we have to do on the back end on the technical side to balance them. So what we're doing, and this is the first year, so it's a pilot year for us, is wait until the year is closed, and then we'll be able to include those appropriations with the carry forward when the audit comes forward, just like the other carry forwards. So it'll be outlined. So our estimate of what that would be right now is about $60 million. So this total appropriations of $44 million, we're anticipating it after the reappropriation to be about 105. But we won't know for sure until some of these projects close out or we just don't have any more time to post items anymore. Again, these are new projects being recommended. These are not the carry forward projects. So these figures will tie back. We have some one-time transfer from different funding sources for some projects. We also have general fund transfers, the second group. Those are from prior years, so there have been prior year transfers identified, and we're just able to make progress is the best way to describe it for enterprise planning and then also broadband projects. There were different funding sources related to expansion of broadband. That was through the state, and our technology services and library departments worked on that. We have some Davis Creek rebuild project in there, which has a different funding source, insurance reimbursements. The recommended general fund transfer, $12.5 million, just to give the board an idea. Ongoing, I would say anywhere between $20 to $25 million a year is what we get for requests just for the CIP 402 infrastructure side. That doesn't include the technology services and doesn't include what we get requests for parks, those types of things, but just this kind of infrastructure facilities to keep our buildings, what we, our assets. We have over $1 billion of assets. So we do have recommended projects in here. I don't want to say it's the top project, but the idea between, on the technology side, is that we're creating efficiencies and we're making it easier the goal is to make it easier for employees and to do their job and be more efficient. And so that's the investment, the thought behind the investment. And then we can see the remainder of those items in the new projects on the right. A lot of them are related to the jail, so the regional detention facility, and other items. Then we have in parks, and again, this is just a new project, the Lazy 5 Regional Park Master Plan update. Normally what we do is when we bring forward with a public hearing and the board does the final budget, we also have the 5-year CIP plan. That will have a lot more detail. It will have the carry forward projects identified, and it's a completely separate item for the board's consideration. So proprietary funds, so our enterprise funds, shorthand, run like a business. Internal service funds, those are services that we provide, mostly benefit our employees or internal. So equipment services, you can think of that as fleet. Risk management is our risk management funds, or workers' comp, unemployment, property and liability, and then health benefits are the health benefits for county employees. And then enterprise funds, we have building and safety, obviously, within planning and building and inspection and permitting. We have the utilities fund and then the golf fund. On the enterprise fund, those are fully funded with user fees, connection fees, revenue that is generated. They're not subsidized by the general fund, so they really do operate on their own. And like the other special revenue funds, each of these funds has general fund cost allocation or indirect costs that are budgeted, that are recouped, for lack of a better term, into those funds. There's nothing, these funds are following the same recommendations at this point of new positions, program expansions, those types of things as well. Well, maybe utilities with Stum Wharf, this is South Truckee Meadows Water Reclamation Facility, or there's still work going on there, but nothing large new on the horizon for next year's budget. So this just brings us back to the recap. So we see on the left-hand side the final budget from 25, the tentative for 26, and what those variances are. The capital project funds, that large variance, $108 million, is what I referred to earlier when we talked about changing the process. And special revenue funds, there could be a variety of reasons why those appropriations are less. Maybe there were one-time items in fiscal year 25. Debt service, that is specific as far as transfers over. Those are all transfers, so all debt service. And that's just debt service schedules having less payments out for debt, which is good. And then on the right is this total budget, if you will, by function, or yes, by function. So you can see general government, judicial, public safety, public works, and that's across everything. So when we see welfare, that's welfare across indigent fund, child protective services, senior services, general fund, which is not a lot for welfare. So those just show the generalized categories, if you will, for the functional categories for the budget. So the tentative budget has to be filed by today, on tax day, which kind of makes it easy to remember. The public hearing on the tentative budget, the certified tentative budget, does get certified by taxation. And the adoption of the final budget right now, May 20th. The final budget has to be filed by June 1st. Then the 5-year capital improvement plan, which is what I referred to earlier. And we normally do that as a separate staff report to follow the budget item in May. And then the debt management policy and statement of indebtedness. And these two last bullets, these items do come to the board. So they don't just get filed, they come to the board for acknowledgement, approval, whatever the statutory requirement is. And then they get submitted to our debt management commission and the Department of Taxation. So if we don't have a approved budget, by default, what happens is our prior year budget becomes our current new upcoming budget, which can be problematic for a variety of reasons. So that's just kind of the, gotten questions, well, so what happens when we get whatever was adopted for this year is what we live with, and taxation through local government, local committee on government finance would have to approve any adjustments to that budget. So that's what I had as far as prepared comments and slides. The appendix does have information related to, it does start slide 25, so I wasn't completely wrong. That gives background to, well, what are those assumptions in that forecast for the recommended budget, which is hopefully helpful. 26 and 27 are those departmental functional budgets. 28 and 29 are the general, it's just the general fund, the sources and uses, which is a different way of looking at the forecast. And then 30 has the general fund appropriations by type. So that's salary and wages, benefits, those types. 31 is basically the two of them side by side. What is the functionality and what is the type? 32 and 33 are the detailed information related to the other governmental revenue or governmental funds. And the last item is page or slide 34, and that is a overview of the property tax and property tax rates related to Washoe County. There is a link at the bottom of that page, and that will take you to the Red Book, which are the certified tax rates as certified by the Tax Commission and published by the Department of Taxation. So that's what I had.
Thank you very much. When was this packet published?
This presentation, I just finished it this morning.
So this puts the board in a difficult position because honestly, the staff report was very vague and high level to make an informed decision. I hear that we are kind of being forced to make a decision today, but I think we need way more detail for our next meeting when we meet on this on the 20th, and we may even need a special meeting, so we need to talk about that as a board. But the board should be presented with information from all funds and broken up in between our agencies. This will help us identify specific drivers for increased need of general funds from our different departments, because some may be caused by just personnel, while others may be from reduced state or federal funds, which this board needs to know about. And I know that we're still learning these, when these funds and where federal funds will be cut, but this is something that we need to be able to monitor. I think when we were asked, okay, show the slide 7, when we were showed slide 7 as a commission, you can't do this. Essentially, you need to be looking at cuts. It put us in a position of, okay, well, maybe we look at open positions and a new way to analyze those open positions. But what's tough is that today we don't have any information on the positions that are going to be impacted and in which department, how the projections of the $12.3 million in vacancy savings were developed. What are the personnel savings currently accounted for? How do they get redistributed, either at the department level or county level? And currently, this is without additional BCC approval. A breakup of positions by department and funding source, including those funded by general fund transfers out, is necessary to be transparent with identifying where impacts will be felt, because we're hearing, I have heard from the sheriff's office in particular that they're feeling the most of the impact, and we need to kind of dig deep and understand that. So if that decision is going to be made by the board, and including information on how the recommendation of the $1 million for the health district will be decided, and if they are in a hiring freeze, is the library doing a hiring freeze? Are there human service staff members in the general fund for the CARES campus and our place in the Indigent and Homeless Services Fund? that's just, those like particular questions are why having the detail will really help us. And I'm concerned, and that's why I want to do some deep diving as a board on these issues, is why do we even need a contingency fund? So if you look at slide 8, we have a contingency fund built in, $12.4 million. And why do we need $12.4 million budgeted in contingency fund for fiscal year 25 when there's only 2.5 months left in the fiscal year? Have these funds been committed? If any department needs additional funds beyond those specifically budgeted, they can request new allocations from this board, especially in times of fiscal uncertainty. We need to be at the forefront of those requests. I really have a problem with just having a bucket for contingency of 12.4 for fiscal year 25, 6.8 for fiscal year 26, 4.7 for fiscal year 27, and I know that those are we're only looking at 26 today, but that bothers me because I feel like the taxpayers deserve some transparency. And I also find it offensive to ask commissioners to cut our discretionary when there's $6.8 million in contingency and the manager's office isn't even proposing cuts to their budget. I will not support cutting funding for essential cleanup, transportation, economic development, overall investments in our commissioners' districts. And so I will say this is what happens when we're told that there's not enough money for all the things we want to do, and I understand that, but we really need to do a deep dive as a board because I'm having some issues with trusting some of the information we're receiving here. So I will go ahead and hear from the other board members. Vice Chair Herman.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for the report on the budget. I'm going to start to sound like a broken record, but we've been going through this for the last 10 years, and sometimes it's good times, sometimes it's bad times, but I think we need to start thinking about how much growth is costing us, because our income isn't enough pay for what we've got going. Maybe there should be a little slowdown in the development, or, the money that you would think you would get from all this growth is sure going out faster than it's coming in. So either in my opinion, we need to look at that as a cost, this development thing, and start thinking about either we have to make a new agreement, stop the abatements, or stop development briefly and figure out where we stand, because we're going to be going downhill from here on if we don't start thinking about that. Thank you.
I agree, Vice Chair Herman. Growth needs to pay for growth, and we are not structurally set up for that as a county. So thank you for that. Commissioner Garcia.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just have a quick question. So on one of the bullets regarding the hiring freeze, it says with vacancy review process established. Can you talk to us a little bit more about where we're at? I know you said it's in progress, but what the county manager envisions for this process.
Good morning, Madam Chair, Madam Vice Chairwoman, members of the Board of County Commissioners, Abby Yacoman, Chief Financial Officer for the record. So we envision this as a multi-departmental group that comes together once every 2 weeks, and we envision a collaborative process where the department comes and says, this is my problem, I would like help solving it. This is a critical position, I can no longer effectuate my mission, I can no longer get this done or that done, and we come together and solve it as a group. And it would be from multiple different departments, included elected and appointed departments.
Okay. And what was the general sentiment when this hiring freeze was proposed to our department heads?
Certainly wouldn't speak for all of them, but kind of ran the gamut between we understand we've been seeing this forecasted to, this is very upsetting to us. We're very concerned about our mission, and that's why we put that secondary review committee in place, not to review and place judgment, but to work together to make sure that everyone's able to execute their legal and board mandated by the strategic plan 3-year vision, those missions as well.
And just so the public understands, when the department heads were notified of the hiring freeze, that was effective immediately?
You are correct.
Okay, thank you.
And we would plan on bringing a board item back for formality's sake on the 22nd,
Okay.
Depending on the discussions today.
Those are my questions for now.
Thank you. And I think, to follow up on that issue, I think you heard my questions on the hiring freeze. I think this board needs that information, that detailed information, to make the best decision that we can on that.
Understood. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Commissioner Andriola.
I have a few things.
Go for it.
Sorry. I just want to expand on things that we've had in meetings. And so from a public perspective, I feel it's important to share. From the very beginning of the very first meeting that you were having with individual commissioners, with briefings, I said in that very first meeting, I really think understanding, where we're at in terms of what that dollar deficit is really helpful. I know it's a little bit of a moving target because we have a lot of information that isn't finalized, right? But the reality is that we do have some information. You're presenting it and have been presenting it. And the question that I asked the county manager in that meeting was, what was the target that was given to each department for at least beginning to look at it? And here's where I'm going with that. It's my understanding, at least the response, and I know the county manager's here, so I'm not, if he didn't hear this correctly, that there wasn't a target that was given. And that is concerning to me, because somebody who's worked with budgets for a long time, both in being responsible and reporting to a board, putting them together, seeing good times, seeing times that aren't so good, it is helpful, I believe, that each department have the ability to understand what that target is, either where we're at with the current fiscal year, with 2025, or what that looks like moving forward, and giving them that target and giving them the freedom. And so putting hiring freezes, from my perspective, is one opportunity, but I don't think that that's a prudent way. And so I would ask, from a county manager standpoint, that you look at opportunities to all the departments to look at what a target is. And some departments are larger than others. Some have various things that are important, and they're all important, and I realize it's very difficult, but all belts need to be tightened, and I think that we should give the discretion to the departments. I think a review process is helpful, but that creates a lot of bureaucracy, in my opinion, in terms of having to come every time with a critical need. We have a critical need to fill this, we have a critical need to fill that, and then going through and getting everybody together and then going through that process. I think many have been here. Many departments have been here with the Great Recession of 2008, 2009. And it's my understanding during those times, I lived here, I saw what happened to our community, and kudos to Washoe County at that time for not laying anyone off. It's my understanding. I wasn't in this position at that time, but I certainly think that there is some talent that we have in what was used then, and why are we not using that? I had specifically wrote down, Manager Brown, that you had shared that this is what we've been doing, and I think that is important. If we weren't where we're at, we can't be doing business as usual. Washoe County is, and from my perspective, is in the business of customer service, delivering essential services. That's why I asked last meeting to look at this board and having a discussion when the time is right to look at what essential services mean, because what I believe essential services may be different than my colleagues. But statutorily and compliance-wise, whether it's state, federal funding, local funding, have grants, for instance, are gifts with strings. There are always compliance requirements that come with particular funding. And who knows that best? In my opinion, the department head who really is managing that mission of that department. And so I think looking at what those targets are, instead of looking at a hiring freeze, giving the departments the ability to present that information, I just didn't see that that was how it was done. And so if it had been done in the past, we're in different times, and I think that is important. So I just really am a little surprised that we heard that you met with all of us and took into consideration, and I realize we didn't meet in a body. That's what we're doing today, and I certainly appreciate that, what one says versus another isn't always appropriate to make those cuts, but it is interesting that we don't even have options. There's not even options here today. It's like, and I'll add, it's April 15th. There is a compliance deadline of reporting. Ms. Cook made it very clear that if we don't act, then it would, and correct me if I'm wrong, in order to be compliant and get the budget in and the draft budget and to meet the state deadline, that's a legal requirement, that has to be done today. And so if there is no action in moving forward with this, then we would be essentially having to rely, meaning reporting to the state, what the budget is for the current fiscal year. And so I'm concerned about that. I'm concerned about timing. I looked at the timeline, for instance, in terms of how the process is moving forward, and I just feel that there are opportunities to have a standing agenda item for the budget as we move through this. I realize that May 28th, am I flying? I feel like I'm Commissioner Garcia when you did the bullet thing, and I feel like I'm flying. So if I'm going too fast, I'll slow down. I just have a lot of notes. So I'll slow down a little bit. So I just want to ask if there's an opportunity for consideration to have a standing agenda item for the budget for every BCC meeting.
Yes.
Thank you. There's a contingent date of May 28th for a possible special meeting. I would ask that if the chair, that's under the chair's purview, and the county manager, and as we move through this process, if there's a need to have a special meeting prior to the 28th, that we look at that as a possibility.
Or the 20th even.
Or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
I just think I think there's an appreciation for how hard everybody is working and how everyone understands that all belts need to be tightened. All belts. So giving us the time to look at things, and I know that it's hard. We're given this information in a meeting, and I wish I had a talent of remembering, like, what is that, photographic memory, but I don't. And so it's difficult as questions come up, or being able to analyze things is difficult when we're given this packet 2 hours ago. And we're making big decisions. We have a fiduciary responsibility, and I take that very seriously. And I know we all do. And I think that being prudent, giving us the necessary time to work through things, although we were in meetings, those meetings...
We got no detail, though.
At all.
No.
And there's a lot of questions. The chair asked some of them already, so I'm not going to repeat them. But I will say this. I opened it up in the meeting this morning during the commissioner comments that I'm asking for a policy to be put into place, that this board would come before this board, that in this case, the library, before the budget is given to the Washoe County, essentially, and then comes before us, that the library board have an opportunity to actually vote on that. I feel that the results of the audit should be given to the library board. And I realize the timing for this fiscal year with this particular budget, with June 1 around the corner, is not necessarily going to align, but I believe that there's an opportunity, once that audit is complete, to be given to the library board. And I have already asked, and thank you, Manager Brown, for offering the opportunity for the talent of Abby Yakubin and the talent of Lori Cook to continue to work with the library board as they work through this. The board, in my opinion, I've almost watched every one of the library board meetings, and although some information, and certainly appreciate Director Scott's opportunity to share in the meetings, but it just never went down to the detail, at least, that if I were on that board, I'd want to know, which is what's happening right now. The detail of what we're seeing right now needs some vetting and needs some additional work. So the policy, the audit, those results going to the library board in the future, not having any recommended budget, because I realize it has to get approved, those recommendations would come with the library board making that vote, however they vote. So we don't get into the library board. We only have two responsibilities, and I understand what they are, but one of them is the budget. And I believe that it's within the purview, but I'll leave it to legal for the policy recommendation I'm asking for. I'm going to also just go back to the hiring freeze piece. I think it's always totally understandable when you're looking at a budget deficit that you look, where can we make this up? And I realize, and I appreciate the reclassification explanation, because it's not just putting a hold on hiring, but it's also the reclassification piece. But I also believe that a department head at the level that he or she is at should be given what that approved budget amount is and be given the liberty to work within that budget. And I think micromanaging it is going to bog down and add bureaucracy. And so my recommendation for consideration, and I'm just one voice, is that whatever that target is, that be given to the departments. They can look at it, you guys can look at it, and that the department heads actually offer what they believe they can, withstand. And they know they are looking at these same projections. It's not just today or this upcoming fiscal year, it's for the future. But that we not just look at that being the only thing. We'll just freeze this and we'll do that. But where are the cuts coming from? Where are the cuts coming from the Office of the County Manager? Where are the cuts coming from other departments? And that's why I go back to essential services, because there are statutory requirements for some of the funds and where they go and how they're spent. So there's essential, in my opinion, and then there's not essential. The essential, where's that bottom line? Go back through, where's the non-essential? What kind of impact does it make? How did the department heads see that? And I just don't see how this can ever be done by June 1st. So I know you all are talented, but I don't know. It's really tough to be put in this situation like this today. And it's really disheartening to me to have such an impact and have all of the employees and have this uncertainty. And I'm going to go back to the library board. Then I find out, just by happenstance, and I'm happy that we found this out, that there's some money in the expansion fund. Well, when did Director Scott know that? All of the scare that happened is really a concern to me. I mean, employees, no one wants to lay anybody off. But the cry of WC1 failed and we're going to lay everybody off without having a plan, without working with the library board trustees, it's now expanded to even all of Washoe County employees. Where are they at? So it's no disrespect to anybody, and it's not trying to put anybody in any harm's way. No one wants anyone laid off. But my goodness, I feel that the process of this entire budget, at least now we have this immense amount of pressure. Get it done, June 1st. It's a compliance requirement, along with all these other today. Moving forward, I hope we as a board can actually look at the county manager to actually give us the professional leadership that we are expecting. And I'm telling you, I've worked with a lot of budgets. I've certainly not worked with $1 billion budget, but I've worked with a lot of budgets and having hundreds of people that are under that budget. And it's really difficult to be put in this situation for all of us, quite frankly, and more importantly, for all the employees that depend on this money for their own livelihood. So it is cost-cutting time, unfortunately, or pausing, or looking at what can't be done because it's not going to have an impact, if you will, that would be what we would consider essential services. So I think all of us have a responsibility to be very prudent in how we move forward, to look at department heads and have them be a part of the conversation. Look at what the target is. We know what that is. Look at these policies that we can help make this strong, and know that we understand the hard work that you all are going through, and we understand how important it is to make sure that it's very serious, this situation. I feel that there's opportunities as well for training, and I've mentioned this in the meeting, so I'll mention this in a public way. Not everybody has a financial background, which is why we have the talent of Ms. Jacobin and Lori Cook. But the more department heads understand the accounting of how things work, so even recording how expenditures should be categorized, and it may seem, for instance, I'm just thinking of the sheriff, maybe the sheriff or the undersheriff or even the finance people that are within each of these departments should be part of that. Not that every department head is going to be a finance guru, but it creates a stronger relationship between the finance person for that department and the person, in this case, the department head, that then are working with support with Ms. Jacobin and Ms. Cook. So I think that there's a lot of room for improvement. I know I probably exceeded my allocated time. I appreciate everyone understanding how serious this is. I take it serious, and I know all of my colleagues take this serious. We care about where your dollars are being spent. And I'll lastly ask again if we can have a line item for unfunded mandates. Because here's what's happening. We all know there's a little thing called the legislature in session right now. We have no idea what's going to come to the counties with unfunded mandates. And I think having that, especially with the transparency that the county has always been proud to support, and now, with even a deeper dive to look at that, I think looking at those unfunded mandates within each department would also be helpful too. So having said that, I believe that I have fulfilled all of my notes. If not, I'd request that I have an opportunity if I do find that I missed something.
Absolutely.
I wasn't even looking at my notes. I probably should have been looking at my notes. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Clark.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't know where to start. I almost wanted to start with making a motion to accept the budget as presented, but I didn't think that would be as funny as I thought it would be. I didn't think the audience would think that was funny. I have to say, I feel I'm with my people today. I agree with everything you said, Madam Chair. I agree with you, Ms. Andriola, Commissioner Andriola. I agree with all the commissioners up here. This is what I've been talking about for months. We come in at the last minute. We talk about janitorial contracts being awarded. We talk about this being awarded, that being awarded. Come in and jam it down us at the last second. No chance to digest it, no chance to look at it. Just jump on in, and we've got to do it today. It's got to be done today. I feel like I'm in a timeshare salesman's meeting when things have to be done today. That isn't the way business is conducted. You don't have to do anything today. You have to study things, and then you make a proper decision. You know, I wish there was a local business school, you know, Wharton Business School or Cornell or one of the major colleges to come in and do a post-mortem about Washoe County and the budget and how things are run around here. Get some real professional advice. You know, we had the professional group we hired from Dignity Index coming out of Salt Lake City to coach us on how to talk at meetings. You know, this is a serious matter here, this budget. As I said last week at the meeting, I talked with the assessor. The assessor tells us he has more new property coming on in the last year than they've ever had in the history of the county, going back from 1861, and it was big the year before. So when this stuff comes on new, it comes on at 100%. There's no depreciation. There's no cap. It comes on new, more assessed value in the history of the county. The treasurer tells me that he's invested the funds of the county and made more money than they've ever made in the history of the county. Just to put that in perspective, for those of you that are not old enough here, there was a treasurer in Orange County, California, about 40 years ago and took all the county's funds to Wall Street and invested it in the stock market and bankrupted the county. We've got the exact opposite here. We've got somebody at the treasurer's office who's investing money wisely and making more money in the history of the county. On top of that, we had the ARPA funds, the COVID money, more money than we've ever seen here. Came in by the boatloads. We've got the highest sales tax, some of the highest sales tax around. We've got the highest gas tax. We've got all of this money coming in, and we're broke. You have more money than you've ever had. And think about this individually in the audience. You've got more money than you've ever had in your life, and at the end of the year, you're broke. What the hell were you doing wrong? Who's watching the watchers? You know, I asked the county manager that same exact question, and he said to me, we're spending too much. Well, who's in charge of that? You know, we've got a situation where we have to make a quick decision on this. We've got, I'd like to give a thank you to the department heads that are here. I see the sheriffs are here. We've got some people from the library here. We've got the health board. We've got the fire department, the Truckee Meadows Fire Service here. This is one of the biggest meetings in the county's annually, and one of the biggest meetings in the county's schedule for commission meetings, and we have very few department heads here. People should be here. The citizens should be here. This is a big deal, and you know, we've got a handful of folks. We had more people talking about the library funding than we have talking about the budget here. I can't understand it. I think we should have the department heads here that actually bring money into the county and explain to us commissioners how they could possibly help solve the budgetary problems. The assessor, the treasurer, the clerk's making money over there. She's got a side hustle of selling passports. It's really bringing in some money over there. So, you know, why aren't these folks being rewarded for that? When somebody's bringing in extra money for the county and they need some extra employees, we should be looking at that. I understand that all departments are important, but the departments who bring in the money should be considered. I talked with Sue DeVay over there, who was my office manager at the assessor's office. She's still there. This gal's one of the smartest people in the county. She's been through over 1,000 interviews. She watches the budget at the assessor's office. She probably knows how many paper clips are in everybody's drawer. She's on top of it. She's a dedicated, solid employee. And we're going to lose her this year to retirement. But she tells me, you know, there are 7 people short over there. This is a department who brings in money. If somebody's bringing in money to fund this, and when we're in tough budgetary times, we need people who actually are earners, who can bring in some money. And we shouldn't treat all departments the same when it comes to who can bring in some money and who just needs to get by. Everybody's important, I get that. But at the end of the day, support those who can find extra money. And you know, I'm going through this report, and I'm looking at it, And again, I talked about a postmortem. I wish we could have somebody who really could give us some independent thoughts on how to better manage our money. More taxes than we've ever had, and we're broke. We're insolvent. The county's insolvent. You know, as far as layoffs, I'm not for laying off anybody. But if anybody was hired with temporary funds, and the word was used, sustainability, ARPA money, COVID money, whatever you want to call it, it wasn't sustainable. We hired department heads. We've hired lots of employees. Those folks should have been told the day they were hired that this money isn't going to be here forever. You have a nice job for a year, 2 or 3, however long it takes, but when this money runs out, you need to go. And I'm not for firing anybody, but I'm also not taking folks that were here working on a temporary allotment of money that become all of a sudden permanent folks. That's something that needs to be looked at. We've got no new taxes we're talking about. Well, we've heard of other folks wanting to talk about taxes, auto registration fees and raising the sales taxes. Going through this, just some notes here. Sustainability continues to grow faster than revenues. Our bills continue to grow faster than revenues. That's a problem. Things need to be looked at. And then elected versus department heads. You know, we've got elected folks, 7 elected department heads in the county. They're elected by the citizens to do their job. And when the county manager's office decides that they can't have the funds they need to do their job, that's not only making it hard for the elected department heads to conduct business, but that's disrespecting the citizens who voted these folks in. When you vote somebody in to run a department that's an elected, you expect them to have the funds and the ability to do what they need to do. They don't have to build empires, but they need to be sustainable, and they need to have the money that they need. And only those folks that are elected have a certain different level of expertise and need what they need to keep those departments running smoothly. I'd like to ask about Northern Nevada Public Health. I understand that there's some fines outstanding. I'd like to know how many fines are outstanding, or restaurants and different fines that the health department's issued fines, and apparently some of those fines are not being paid in a timely fashion. So I'd like to hear about that. If we're going to look for money, let's look for money everywhere, in the cushions of the couches around, and everywhere else we're going to need to find money. We need to look for it everywhere. I'll bring up Dandini Spectrum development. 400 and some apartment units were supposed to be built 3 years ago, approved by the city of Reno. The county's held that up. It's my understanding that the county's lost between $5 and $7 million in property tax because that property's been stalled for 3 years waiting to get approval for a secondary road through the Sheriff's Training Academy. You know, these are reasons why we're not hitting on all cylinders, is we're missing opportunities. Not only were we lost the tax income from that particular project, but they were going to increase the sewer capacity near the sheriff's jail, increase the water capacity there, straighten out the road, the big nasty tight turn roundabout they have up there on Dandini Road and Parr Boulevard, whatever it's called there. So all of these things are missed opportunities, and yet we're crying the blues here. Road funds, you know, when that was passed here in the county, people were told, oh, please vote for this. You're going to have better roads. Here it is a number of years later. We're paying the highest gas taxes in the state, maybe in the nation, and we find out that only 3.2 cents is going to road maintenance. Why was it sold to the public years ago that we get this gas tax in and our roads are going to improve? And yet it is, out of 30, 40, 50 cents, whatever the number is, we get 3 cents, 3.2 cents for road maintenance. People need to know that. It needs to be on the record. When you're at the gas station here and you're paying the highest gas taxes around, and we're getting an extra 3 cents to maintain the roads, it doesn't seem right. We also had something on the county's website that we hired some 327 or 357 new hires. I brought that to a board meeting, and I was told that was part of attrition and replacement, and it really wasn't that. But, you know, I'd like to know what the entry-level county employee receives for their whole package, and then you times that by 327 or 354 or whatever the heck the number was. It was 300 plus. So I've got lots of questions, and there's lots to digest, and this could be an all-day meeting just about this, and it should have happened a month or two ago, not today. So those are my partial comments. Thank you, and thank you again for your comments, Chair. I really appreciate you, and thank you as well, Miss. I want to call you Miss. I wanted to call. I'm Chair. Commissioner is the word I was looking for, Andriola. I know what your name is. Thank you.
Commissioner Andriola, I've got you signed up.
I actually have a question. Ms. Cook or Ms. Jacobin or the county, whoever is the appropriate person. In preparing for the meeting, the staff report on page 5 of 7, that's what I'm going to refer to. I just read this paragraph, and it's the last, the paragraph underneath the breakdown of the positions, and it states where it says the county's total levied property tax remains at 1.3917 per $100 of assessed valuation. This rate has been the same since fiscal year 2005, 22 years. The statutory maximum is $3.66 per 100 of assessed valuation. Most areas of the county are at 3.66 maximum due to overlapping rates of different non-county entities, and then listed all the entities. So I read that, and then I reread it. I'm just trying to understand. So is the county's total levied property tax, or if it's too much, I can talk to you offline. But you first state it's 1.3917, and then later on you're stating that essentially we're maxed out. So I'm confused.
Sorry.
That's
for
okay.
the record, Lori Cook, that is the portion that is related to the county. So that's Washoe County. So we have our operating rate, debt rate, capital facilities rate, used to have the library expansion fund. So of that 366, that's the portion that is attributable to Washoe County. If you live in an incorporated city, you're going to pay the 95.98. If you live where there's a potential the GID or something, so that's the overlapping rate. So well, I can speak for myself. So I pay a separate fire rate for TMFPD, as well as, my district rate and that base rate, that 2.7, because a portion of the overall 366 also goes to the state, the cities, the GIDs, or whoever those local entities are, and not that it matters, but technically it's 364, but during the legislative sessions, there's a 2-cent override for the state that the state approves, and if they reapprove it during the legislative session, it then is over and above that 364.
Thank you for clarifying that. And I also I neglected to give a shout out to Justin Taylor and the investment committee for I'm part of that investment committee and having this board approve the company that is now in contract with the county and has been in contract with the state for years and years and years, has proven to be a really wise choice. So I do want to, recognize that. But thank you, Ms. Cook, for that explanation. And just to be really confused where I'm at now in terms of moving forward, if in fact, I just want to make sure that from my perspective, I don't think that we as a body, I didn't understand how the hiring freeze could happen without our support or vote. And so I'm just also very confused on that legally. I'm understanding there's a hiring freeze right now, I believe, effective right away. And then from my perspective, I think that it warrants additional discussion based on how these budgets are going to look. Not that I'm encouraging for hiring to be happening, but I do feel that giving direction to the county manager to look at not having that be what we're approving in terms of that being the course of action for balancing a budget. I just want to make sure I'm really clear on that I don't think that is, from my perspective, appropriate course of action to do to all of the departments, and that there be a better opportunity for meeting a particular deadline. And again, to Commissioner Clark's point, kudos to any of the departments that are looking. Not all departments have the ability to generate revenue. I mean, that's just the way it is, but kudos to the clerk's office. I keep on asking if, maybe I should ask that now when it's appropriate for the clerk to do a presentation on the revenue that she has been bringing in. But the point is that I would leave that to the county manager on how to approach that, but we do know what the shortfall is. So if there's a shortfall in 2025, we're currently in, what does that look like for all the department heads from a target, and then what does it look like in moving forward for the future budget?
But we're not in a shortfall. We have a $12.5 million contingency.
Well, I saw that too, and I'm not sure what that all means. I don't even know what the deficit is at this juncture, so.
Commissioner Garcia, do you have anything else?
With the attempt to try to summarize and not minimize in this effort, I just wanted to let the public know, from my standpoint, the information that was presented to me and us happened at the January BCC meeting, and as you will remember, it was very clear that there's a lot of things that are out of our control. The flattening of the C-tax was mentioned, the PERS increase that caught us off guard in December, the economic conditions both here in Nevada and throughout the U.S., the tough housing market that we're facing, and the high unemployment rates that we have in Nevada. And so I know it sounds like the county manager's office is getting beat up really hard right now for a lot of things that we are out of control. And my attempt to kind of summarize what has been said is that given the conditions we're in right now, given the weight of this conversation, the January BCC meeting, I had my briefing on March 17th and on April 1st. I'm not sure what my colleagues had, but we did have briefings. I need that to be clear. And during those briefings, we were notified that roads had risen to the top, library, NNPH's needs, and SGST. Again, I can't speak, I'm seeing some head nods, but those briefings did happen, so we were completely taken off guard. But my attempt to summarize is that given the tough decisions we have to make and the ripple effects that this conversation will have, it seems that my colleagues would have liked more detail more frequently and been giving a more comprehensive list of options to perhaps choose. And it sounds like that leaning on our department heads is something that we would like to see included. So that's my attempt to just kind of summarize. But we need to drill down a little bit. Everybody had their chance to kind of air their grievances, but we need to make some decisions and continue this robust discussion. So I'm not comfortable with just putting our hands in the air today and saying, we push pause. I think we need to.
We can't.
Yeah,
we can't do that.
Not the option to push pause today. So in efforts to kind of, I talked about what's out of our control, what is in our control today as decision makers. And, I'm referencing the suggestions on page 9 of the PowerPoint. So if you can pull up that slide if possible. Page 9 has a variety of different bullet points. I can't remember what briefing I received the hiring freeze as a potential solution, so I'm just going to table that one for now. But for me, I'm just one vote. Speaking from my perspective, I don't think we have the luxury of ignoring the safety concerns and the infrastructure needs of our roads. I think that $5 million transfer to the roads funds is essential. And this conversation is only going to get harder and worse as the years progress. So I feel comfortable with that recommendation as it stands. Having served on the District Board of Health Board previously, I have a little bit more knowledge about the operations and the services that they provide. Seeing that that has been a flat transfer for, I can't remember how many years, but I am supportive of the $1 million transfer to Northern Nevada Public Health at this time, with the understanding that our manager over there, I'm sorry, I'm forgetting your title at the moment, will work with our county staff to really dive in and dig into those layers to see how you can be more lean, more efficient. But I am supportive of that transfer today. And then last but not least, the library budget. I have been supportive of the library budget before I've been, or supportive of the library system before I became a county commissioner. I will always unapologetically support our library system. That said, you know, I understand the concerns of my colleagues. I'm very open-minded, and I understand there's a lot of different perspectives on how money is managed and this, the trustees' involvement. I'm not going to get into any of that today. I don't feel like that's our lane to dive into. Staying in my lane today, I want to see the library brought back to whole status for the next year. And that is the 1.3 general fund allocation I want to support, and I strongly support. The end result that my colleagues would like to see with, you know, a potential audit, you know, the involvement of the library trustees, that will happen, but I'm not comfortable pushing pause on our library system today in order to wait for those changes to happen. There's, in my opinion, when you have a department or a member of your team that is struggling or needs additional support and resources, the last thing you want to do is pull the resources and then offer help. I would rather us see that we go right in and recognize that this is an area that we need to focus on and come up with solutions, but yanking $1.3 million out from under them when this is a viable solution that our county manager has brought forward, I am not comfortable with tabling that or not approving that today. So that's my attempt to drill down staff. I'm sorry, we stay so high level sometimes, but I wanted to get on the record that I am supportive of those transfers today.
Thank you, Commissioner Garcia. That's great. And Vice Chair Herman, do you have anything to add? Okay. Going back around to Commissioner Clark was signed in, and then Commissioner Andriola.
Sure.
Thank you, Madam Chair. That was just an example. The question, first of all, I want to thank Ms. Cook for being here today. I could tell by her voice this is not a fun day for her. This isn't the happiest place in the world today. But this is an example of, we appreciate your opinion, we appreciate your knowledge, but this, when we ask a question about what our tax rates are for the county, I would like to see the treasurer here himself explaining that to the public and getting it on the record so people can look at that in the future. And the treasurer is the subject matter expert in this county as far as I'm concerned. So no disrespect to you, but in the future, I'd like to hear the treasurer answering questions about treasurer issues and being on the record with that. Next, I want to go back to page 9 as well. I'm opposed to taking away the discretionary funds for the county commissioners. All of that money goes into helping the community and goes into helping the nonprofits here. They're struggling as well, so we should have the ability to direct some funds that way. And then I take exception to library budget will be flat. No reductions and no increases. The library budget has been, and we've heard that explained from Assistant County Manager Solero, was at 14 million whatever change, and now it's going to be 18 million because we're going to fund what the citizens voted against. I'm not 100% positive on that, but the citizens voted against this, and to say it's flat and then add it in a different way is the absolute definition of election deniers. I've been called, because of my party, an election denier from the 2020 election until probably still today. I was never an election denier. Some people were unhappy that somebody didn't become a president, and they thought that the elections were stolen from them. Now we've got a situation where it truly was an election, wasn't stolen by anybody. It was voted by the people to not fund this further. And now we, as 4 or 5 county commissioners here, are going to overrule 100,000 voters. I'm not saying we shouldn't put money into the library, and I'm not saying that at all, but just to give in the exact same money that the voters just said no to, I'd like to ask Ms. Canderas if we can get the definition of a sunset law. What does that mean? So we can get that on the record, please.
Commissioner Clark, generally a sunset law means something's out of effect. It's no longer in effect.
It had a time limit, and it had run its course. Is that correct? It's run its course. They had a 30-year time limit, and it had run its course. Okay, and when it ran its course, the people said that they didn't want to vote on it. They didn't want it to continue. And I wasn't there 30 years ago, but I can almost guarantee you that whoever had this on the ballot said, "Oh, please vote on this. This is going to be only 30 years, and then it'll evaporate. It'll go away." Well, we all know that that doesn't happen unless the Easter Bunny delivers that. You know, it doesn't happen. Nothing gets sunsetted. We get that message, but that was the message that was told to people who voted on it initially. Again, I'm not against the library, but don't say it's going to be flat when you're going to infuse it with an extra $4 million. Flat means it was $14 million in the past, and it should remain at $14 million unless Ann Silver and her body finds that they might need some more, and then I'll support it 100% all day long. But I'm not just going to support it just because somebody said so when we're in a budgetary crisis. There's $4 million that maybe could be used to hire some extra folks at the assessor's office who more than pay their way. Okay, so just throwing money at it because somebody thinks that's the right way. Again, the definition of sunset is sunset. It's over. It ran its course. But if it needs help, the library needs help, I'm 100% on board with that. But not just to do it right off the bat. And the tough economic times we're having, one of the things that the manager's office did right off the bat is put the money back in after the voters said they didn't want it there. So I'm opposed to this, and I won't be supporting this budget today, so count me out. I'm not going to have this come in and get an hour or two a review of this, and I'm not going to vote for it. So we need more time to review this and talk to the department heads and have some reports from department heads instead of the manager acting as the interpreter for the department heads. Thank you.
Commissioner Andriola.
Thank you. I think there is some clarification that, at least from my perspective, just needs to be made. And so thank you, Commissioner Garcia, for trying to summarize everything. But the reality is that the 1.3 million, Commissioner Clark, is directly related to the additional funding. The expansion fund is in there. And so really it's going to be the next fiscal year, not the one that we're talking about with FY26. FY27 will be where it is absolutely zero expansion fund. There's literally, give or take, because it keeps on moving, and it's just because of expenditures, and that's how budgets work. Budgets are live. Budget money comes in, money goes out, and so there's different. But the reality is that there was approximately 3.7, 3.8, 3.5. Lori's shaking her head. Mr. Solero's shaking his head. In the expansion fund that was already in the Washoe County bank account, essentially. That even though the voters voted the way they did, that money was collected prior to that happening. What I'm not going to support is the 1.3, because I believe that the trustees for the library board should be given this opportunity to review and see if in fact the 1.3 that's coming from the general fund to be added to the expansion fund that has nothing to do with the voters. The voters had already approved that. So unfortunately, my colleague has left, and I wish I would have had the opportunity to share this with him. But that is how it's the 1.3 that is really, I would say, needing the full budget to be reviewed by the library board and looking at if there is savings, what that can look like, what the efficiencies are, whatever they're. And to Commissioner Garcia's, lane is important. We're not part of that lane. We're not here to determine what the library board needs or doesn't need. That's not within our purview. But the reality is that I just don't feel that they've had that opportunity. And so it is a little bit of a different way of looking at things. Commissioner Garcia's point's well taken in terms of like willing to look at funding it, and if it needs to be adjusted, it can come back. I'm saying the same thing, except I'm not willing to support the 1.3. So I don't know where this vote's going to end up, but I would vote in terms of looking at no new positions. If we're going to go down page 9, I would look at the hiring freeze, actually not be a hiring freeze, but the no new positions, existing positions, and I've already, it would be the third time to repeat it, so I'm not, in terms of how that can be approached. No reclass, the library budget, I would not approve the 1.3. And I will say that Dr. Kinsley now serving and taking Commissioner Garcia's seat, and those are big shoes to fill. We as a board with the Northern Nevada Public Health and through Dr. Kinsley's leadership and the staff are really looking at those dollars and how everything works. And so I would support that $1 million, increasing the roads fund from the general fund. I would. I don't use the special district funds for nonprofits, so I'll leave that to my colleagues. And the rest of it is self-explanatory. So I don't know where you'll go with that vote, Madam Chair, but essentially that's where I'm going to summarize it.
And so I'm wondering, looking to the manager and Ms. Cook and whomever else wants to chat with us about this, with the direction you've received, and I think we'll have a really robust conversation next week on the hiring freeze, what it will look like, taking into consideration some of Commissioner Andriola's direction on that. So we can, I almost feel like that decision can come theoretically on Tuesday. Some of these things that, there seems to be some disagreement about, which is really the library budget, what I hear loud and clear, because I think Commissioner and, I align with Commissioner Garcia. I want to see the library budget whole, but I also think that 1.3 won't be spent because there's a hiring freeze or there's a request for departments to do cuts. So at the end of the day, that will be less. And so I think that's where it's really tough to, in sympathy to my coworkers who see, concerns with that 1.3 million for the library budget. They don't have the detail, and they don't have the recommendation they feel like they need from the library board. I mean, in some ways, we approve the budget. I'm okay with, tentatively giving them that amount and seeing what their cuts will be. But I understand the concerns from my coworkers, and I want to get something done today. But I do think we need a special session on the budget. I was looking at my calendar to find a good date, and I realized I probably should just not do that live at the dais, but hopefully before the 20th, we need to have just an item on the budget for this board to kind of go through the detail that I requested at the beginning here, because I think we're being asked to do some difficult things, and we need the detail to get there. So I look to the manager and Ms. Cook, what do we need to do today to ensure that we don't want to pass last year's budget? We understand that we have new circumstances this year. It's just, we have some concerns with some of these recommendations. So how do we proceed, and what have we done historically when there's some debate within the board?
You want to take that?
Sure.
First of all, I want to say thank you for the input. I think there are some things that can be done before the final budget is put together for next month. We can certainly look for appropriate time to have a special meeting to drill down deeper into some of the issues that have been raised here. So I'll turn it over to Lori to talk about what is possible.
Good afternoon again. For the record, Lori Cook, Washoe County Budget Manager. Getting direction from the board. Getting direction from the board as to what you've been discussing. That was the main intent or outcome of today. That's why it's, style for action. We take those recommendations, feedback, put them, plug them in. It's not quite that easy, but plug them in, and then it creates, right, okay, well, this is what this looks like, this is what this looks like, and so we can fold that in. So it's not, today is, I don't want to say it's the beginning discussions, because there have been other discussions, but today's really to the point that we can is to get direction. And from what I'm hearing, part of that direction is also to have some follow-up conversations at the board level related to more detailed information. I will just clarify that while we have to submit the tentative budget, the board doesn't actually vote on that. The tentative budget is what the board, and we have the public hearing when it's certified by taxation. We can certainly have changes between tentative and final, and we do. COVID's a perfect example. So we want to be able to incorporate the comments, the feedback, the requests of what that budget looks like, and then be able to, however the timing is, and not, it was never the intention to not give the board detail. It's just, there's a lot of parts, pieces to this, and a lot of information that we don't know by certain time periods. So, not an excuse, so apologies to the board. The other thing that we can do is post the tenant. Now, it's a crazy, not user-friendly document. It's called the state doc. We can post that after today's meeting, and then what happens is you can see like the general fund, and then you can see all the departments.
Great.
What you're not going to see is detail. You're not going to see this much for professional services and this much for motor pool or something, for example, but you will see salaries, benefits, service supplies, and capital. And so we can post that as part of the materials, the follow-up materials with the presentation as well.
Great.
And then that way the public can see it too.
And then if we have questions to do some, when we do that follow-up special meeting, we can, ask them, and hopefully departments can come to that meeting and we can kind of clarify. Like the state budget process is way more lengthy and way more detailed. And I'm almost wondering if for next fiscal year, that may be the way that we kind of proceed, is really just doing that deep dive, especially when we're being asked to make these cuts. And so I think this board just needs to have the appropriate amount of information. And listen, you have a hard job. We're not here to hammer you or any one person at all. It's just that I think we just need to be clear about the expectations moving forward. So I know you work very hard, and this is not a personal attack at all. This is, we just want to make sure that we are heard. And I don't know if we felt very heard from this process. So, okay, we have given direction. You're saying, do we need, and I know I have public comment. I'll throw it over to that, but I'm just curious. You've got a motion here, but I think it will be difficult to get the votes on it because it's essentially approving what's before us. So how do you need us to proceed today?
And I want to double check with DA Canderas, but we take I don't think that there has to be official action. I think we can take the feedback and the comments, we can incorporate those.
Great.
And then move forward with, okay, we're going to establish a special meeting, have more discussion, and have more details. So I don't think that this item requires a formal motion. Okay,
wonderful. Commissioner Garcia.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I forgot to say some things, but the guiding light for you and the county manager's office has been to maintain services, no layoffs or furloughs, and stabilize expenditure growth. And you presented some recommendations that stabilize expenditure growth. You said earlier, Lori, in your presentation, that the best practice is to address budget issues as early as we can, and again, wasn't in all of the briefings, but I think that was the general consensus. We are concerned. We are not the only ones facing budget deficits in the region. We've got City of Sparks, Reno, Washoe County School District, and probably many others that I'm not aware of. And all ideas are on the table at this point. And so some of these will not apply to us, but I just wanted to rapid fire another list of things to consider as we move forward, maybe not this year, but as things continue to tighten year over year. We know that some folks are offering early retirement buyouts, adjusting franchise fees, looking at interlocal agreements, limiting attendance at events, buying tables to support nonprofits, conducting an organizational audit of all departments to combine teams where it's possible, eliminating duplicative efforts, opening up new RFPs for big vendors, pausing certain equipment replacement processes. And then, of course, there's a lot more drastic measures that are on the table from our colleagues in other jurisdictions. And these ones give me pause because we know that families and small businesses are struggling throughout our region. And so before we ever venture into these drastic measures, I would hope that we have plenty of time and information and consensus among the board. But these include things like increasing city fees for parks and rec, fire inspections, eliminating sewer connection fee waivers for low-income development, of course, layoffs, and levying a new tax like SGST. I think those should be last resort options. We will probably be talking more about these things as the years continue. I have not had the privilege of serving a decade like my colleague, Vice Chair Herman. This is the first tough conversation I have been a part of. I thank the team for all of your hard work. I know today wasn't easy, but I'm confident that when we put our heads together, we'll find some viable solutions and be able to move forward in a positive direction. But that's all my comments.
Thank you for that. Vice Chair Herman, do you have anything else before I open it up to public comment? No, okay. Commissioner Andriola, anything else?
I did. I actually wrote that down too in terms of Commissioner Garcia sharing about your statement, Ms. Cook, about best practice to address as early as possible. I think that there is opportunities that were already shared, so I'm not going to repeat what Commissioner Garcia so eloquently articulated, but I do think that there are opportunities when there are things that happen that look pretty dismal, if you will. I think it can create efficiencies. I think that there are opportunities to look at leveraging resources and not necessarily doing business as usual. And I do want to recognize the county manager and the staff for having those early meetings. I want to make sure that I wasn't implying that this was the very first time that I've ever seen any numbers, but it was the first time that we had seen this. And that's what I just wanted to clarify that we have had meetings, and I think that there are opportunities. I think we'll be better for all of it when this is done. And I think those inflection points, even historically, through history, when there's been downturns, have opportunities that we can capitalize on. But when you're in these kinds of situations, you have to look for those leverages, how to be more efficient, what is really needed, what might we pause, what might we reevaluate later. And so these are the tough decisions, and I'm sorry that we're all having to go through it, but we all are having to go through it, and that's the reality. That's what leadership is about, and doing this in a very planned way for sustainability as well, especially with so many things that are uncertain. That, I think, is the hardest part. So kudos to you, Ms. Cook and Yakbin and the team and the county manager, everyone who's been involved. The amount of work that we're seeing is tremendous, and it needs to be recognized. So this isn't implying that you're not doing a great job. You are, but I do look forward to the continued discussions, and I look forward that maybe one day we can look at the betterment of how we all are when this is all done. And it's not to be in any way not appreciative of everyone at the county who does great work every day that, aren't here, but I do echo the chair's sentiment about looking forward on what we might do. I'm very familiar with how the legislature works in terms of their budget. I think that there's some opportunities to look at how we can get this discussion going early and how we can have department heads be participatory in that and working in a collaborative way for the betterment of our community. So thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate the time.
Thank you. Commissioner Clark.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I, too, had meetings with the manager and budgetary staff about this, several meetings, and my position has remained unchanged. We weren't allowed to record, and I wasn't allowed to take any of the paperwork with me, but many of the suggestions that I suggested we look at, none of those were implemented on this. So none of this was new to me. A little more detail here, but my thoughts were the same about more money than we've ever had in the county's history, and yet we still can't manage to balance the budget. And certain departments that may need more staff are not getting it because we've just drawn a line in the sand that nobody gets any more staff when they actually can prove to you that they bring in income to the county, which the county desperately needs. So if anybody thinks that I didn't hear a lot of this before, I did, and I disagreed with it then, and I disagree with it now. So that's my position. Thank you.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, public comment.
They've been waiting a long time. First up, we have Janet Butcher, followed by Penny Brock.
Janet Butcher for the record. A lot of what I was going to actually talk about, I was very happy to hear the commissioners, most of them anyway, bring up the questions and the concerns. Don't fall off your seats for the compliment. But it was interesting to hear about the $3 million, if it was already in the expansion fund. Why hasn't it been used? Why is it still sitting in the expansion fund? I guess I don't understand that. And I may have misheard this, but I think that I heard that they were talking about cutting money for the sheriff, but not the library. I find that rather interesting. If you've ever gone into the library, and I'll say it, I will say it. I grew up in the library. I learned how to read. I went to the library. I checked out 3, 4, 5 books a week. I grew up in a small town. I love the library. However, if it's not run efficiently, there's a problem. And I've was in there one day, and there was a little display, and it was really cute. It had this little thing where you could like pull something out and do this and do that, and it had to do about book banning, and all of a sudden now it shows up with slash, I can't think of the terminology that it was, but the one where we were asking about the books being, the inappropriate books being available to underage people, for children to be able to check out, to look, maybe even go in a corner. In fact, some of them were even on display, so you could just pick them up and right outside the teenage section. And so why are we spending our taxpayer money on propagating porn for children? I have to say, bless the budgetary staff. They're trying to put 10 pounds in a 5-pound bag. Bless their hearts. Thank you.
Thank you.
Penny Brock, followed by Valerie Wade.
Penny Brock for the record. Here is the library budget for 2024, found on page 208 of your fiscal year 309 document about the budget. You can see, we've heard over and over again, the library's not going to get any money. I never knew what they're talking about. This year they got $12 million. Next year it's in the budget for 12 million and some dollars. Where's the library budget from the library board? The library budget is not transparent. Even you don't have it, nor Ann Silver or the rest of the library board. They're not transparent. Why not? You tell us there's not going to be any new taxes this year. Well, I have to assume as a homeowner, my property tax will go up 3%. So I want to know, is my property tax going to go up? If it is, that is a new tax. Otherwise, please stop saying there is no new tax on property owners. Also, the library is getting that $12 million. So you're wanting to put an additional $1.3 million in from the general fund. They're getting a huge increase. That's not right. You want to reduce the commissioner's discretionary fund from $100,000 to $20,000. So I, as a taxpayer, have to assume that you're pulling that out to justify putting an additional $1.3 million into the library. You know what? There's a lot of nonprofits out there that need help. We're giving the library $12 million. It's up from $10 million 2 years ago. Has the money been managed properly? The audit reports say no. Also, the library board, in their bylaws, says the library board is to acknowledge the annual budget for the library and monitor expenditures. There's already a policy about that. Why doesn't Ann Silver and the library board have the budget? Have they been allowed to monitor expenditures? There's a lot of questions about the library director. The Library Expansion Fund, page 241, shows there was a carryover of $3,781,655 something or another. It's ending at $3,261,476. We're all confused about this Library Expansion Fund. When I first heard about it, I go, what is that?
Valerie Wade, followed by Tara De Quiros.
Valerie Wade, Spark Citizen, hate public speaking. Thank you to Washoe County staff for everything they do in this extremely volatile and sometimes hostile environment. It's important work, and I appreciate everything you do. To correct one misunderstanding, the county has experienced huge layoffs in the past during economic downturns, and the library and parks always take the biggest hits, always. At first, this proposed budget felt like a win for our community because the library system will not lose funding next year. Then I realized that this budget has essentially allowed the library to keep money that was voted for by taxpayers 30 years ago and managed to deny a new branch for the North Valleys. So no new branch for North Valleys, no change to library funding for FY26, and the 2 cents designated for 30 years to libraries is now used to fund other programs in the general fund. There's only one way that ends this time next year. Library expansion funds saved over the years for a North Valley branch will be gone. The 2 cents will be absorbed in programs that can't exist without it, and the library system will be budgeted at the same level they were, 40 years ago? Is that where we're going? I am 100% opposed to having the Library Board of Trustees make budget recommendations instead of county staff. We did not elect them. We elected you. No other department that I know of is treated that way. We keep singling out the library system, like they've done something wrong. Washoe County finances are audited every year by an independent third party that this board selects, and the results of that audit is provided to you in a report that this board acknowledges every year. And these reports are available to you and everyone else on the county website. Efficiency studies have been done over the years also. The difference with those is that it is very difficult to find a vendor that holds the same professional standard for unbiased opinions that an accounting firm does. But let's say you find an unbiased vendor and you decide it's worth the tens of thousands of dollars it'll cost to do some efficiency audits. If the purpose of this is to save money, why would you start with the library or the manager's office, which I heard suggested at the last meeting? Why not start with this board? For transparency, accountership, and leadership. I have not seen the FY26 budget details, so I pulled up FY24. In 2018, this board had $235,000 in services and supplies. In 2021, they had $248,000 in services and supplies. In 2024, you had $661,000 in services and supplies. This seems easy enough to audit for efficiency. This board's services and supply budget has doubled, maybe almost tripled. What's the history of the food line? What's the history of the travel line? It would be pretty easy to dig down in that pretty effectively. And you could be looking at yourselves and showing leadership by doing.
Thank you.
Tara De Queiroz.
I just wanted to make a brief comment calling into question Ann Silver's statement that she hadn't had enough time to view the budget. Those of us who go to every library board meeting because we're deeply concerned about whether the library board is actually advocating for the library, which we're beginning to realize they are not, we have seen the budget presented in excruciating detail in multiple meetings. If you go into the recordings of those meetings, the agendas and the minutes, the budget has been there at several meetings in great detail. The director has been there to answer any questions. And I'm sorry to say that what we've observed is that the board members don't seem to have the capability of understanding the information that's presented to them. Many of us in the audience have been sitting there shaking our heads as they ask the same questions over and over, things that seem fairly obvious to us. And so I'm questioning why she's coming here to say she hasn't had the information, because she has. And I feel like there's something political going on that I'm not able to understand, but there are many of us in the community who are not willing to sit by while people are disingenuous, to sit by and see the library be defunded. And I think a previous speaker sort of revealed the reason, the momentum behind the effort to defund the library, and it is homophobia. Thank you.
Thank you.
There's nobody else signed in.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. With that, are there any other commissioner comments on this item? I'm not seeing any. All right. It sounds like we don't need to do anything. We'll continue to have the budget discussions and we'll take it from there. Now I'd like to go into item 8, Manager Brown.
Test. Item 8 is a recommendation to accept a grant award from the Bureau of Justice Assistance, FY24, invited to apply Burn Discretionary Community Project Grants, Burn Discretionary Grants Program. Award number 15 PBJA-24-GC-00250-BRND, amount not to exceed $996,000. No county match required to cover costs related to the Washoe County Sheriff's Office Forensic Science Division Regional Rapid DNA Program for the retroactive grant term of October 1st, 2024 through September 30th, 2026. And if approved, authorize Sheriff Balaam to retroactively execute the grant award documentation and direct the Finance Department to make the necessary budget adjustments.
Thank you very much. Do any board members need a staff report on this item? Okay. Any public comment, Madam Clerk?
There is none.
Okay, I'm looking for a motion on item 8, please.
I'll move to
Commissioner
approve.
Drill. Okay, and.
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Garcia. Any questions on the motion from the board? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, please say nay. And that motion passes unanimously. We'll now move into item 9. Manager Brown.
Item 9 is a discussion and direction to staff regarding legislation or legislative issues proposed by legislators by Washoe County or by other entities permitted by the Nevada State Legislature to submit bill draft requests or such legislative issues as may be deemed by the chair of the board to be of critical significance in Washoe County. Pending legislative bills can be located at the county website. Current bills the county is tracking that may be reported on or discussed are also listed under the Government Affairs section of the county's website. Due to the time constraints inherent in the legislative process, a list of specific bills that staff will seek direction from the commission on during this item will be posted on the website under the Government Affairs section by 6 p.m. the Friday before the meeting. Due to the rapid pace of the legislative session, additional bills upon which comment may be sought from the Board of County Commissioners will be posted as soon as known.
Thank you very much. And it looks like Ms. Matievich is here to give us an update.
It's afternoon, yes. Good afternoon, Chair Hill, Vice Chair Herman, members of the Commission. For the record, my name is Cadence Matievich, Government Affairs Liaison. Here to provide for you an update. We are in week 11 of the 17-week legislative session. To date, 1,093 bills and resolutions have been introduced. 13 of those have been passed and become law. Last Friday was our first major deadline for bill passage. That was what we call a first House committee, so bills needed to be out of committee in their House of origin. 281 bills failed to meet that deadline, and so those measures will not continue forward. Unfortunately, included in those were 2 bills that Washoe County had recommended to the Nevada Association of Counties, SB 65, which had to do with keeping voter registration signatures available for inspection by the public but not providing copies, and also SB 73. Excuse me, I may have those 2 reversed. Yes, SB 65 was the public records of the medical examiner and coroner. SB 73 is voter registration signatures. Unfortunately, neither of those advanced past the deadline. Our next big deadline will come next Tuesday, and that is first House passage deadline, where bills must pass out of their House of origin. There are certain bills that are exempted from these deadlines. Typically, they are bills that have to do with the budget, because the state is still in its budget process as well. Those bills are often set aside, referred to what we call the money committee, so either Assembly Ways and Means or Senate Finance, and then they are processed once we get closer to the time when they are finalizing the state's budget. With that, Madam Chair, I don't think I have any other additional bills. I know that there were some that have been discussed in previous meetings. I don't have any particular updates, but I'm happy to answer any questions on any bills of interest to the Commission.
Thank you very much. Vice Chair Herman. Okay, Commissioner Garcia. Commissioner Andriola. Commissioner Clark. Okay, well, thank you for your great work. We'll continue to monitor.
Thank you.
Moving through.
It's nice to be here.
Yeah, okay. We have a closed session, which we'll go up and do after we do our public comment and our announcements, and then we will take public comment up with our closed session. So if folks want to come up and wait until we're done with our closed session, we can take that as well. But now I will move into item 11. Manager Brown.
Item 11 is public comment. Comment heard under the item will be limited to 3 minutes per person and may pertain to matters both on and off the commission agenda. Unused time may not be allocated to other speakers. The commission will also hear public comment during individual action items with comment limited to 3 minutes per person. Comments are to be made to the commission as a whole. Virtual public comment may be taken when facilities are available.
Thank you very much. Madam Clerk.
We have Virginia Larmore signed in.
I'm 6'1", and I'm in heels. Virginia Larmore, I'm a constituent of District 2. Thank you for your time, and thank you for all the work that you do. I'm glad I stayed for this full session because I learned a lot, and I have a lot of respect for the amount of work and attention and diplomacy that you have to do in these positions. So thank you. I don't want to harp on the library. I think we've done that a lot, but here we are. I don't think it's unreasonable to ask that the library make cutbacks along with other departments. That's fair, as far as I'm concerned. And you emphasize the importance of utilizing department heads in those decisions. That is also a great idea. When it comes to the library, however, we have a problem. Department heads can only function successfully with the support of their board of trustees. That board of trustees needs to be educated in what they're supposed to be working toward. Unfortunately, the board has proven multiple times that they don't understand the budget. The public was forced to sit through a line-by-line, protracted explanation of the budget at the behest of the board. And here today, shockingly, the chair admits she doesn't understand the budget. Tomorrow, the Library Board of Trustees is set to vote on an action item related to Director Jeff Scott's performance. Much of the negative language in that review accuses Director Scott of mishandling the budget, a budget we're only today getting a full picture of. You see the problem here. How can you make any judgments related to budgetary efficiency if A, the full budget wasn't released till today, and if the chair of the board herself confesses that she doesn't understand it? It betrays, frankly, ulterior motives and a clear need for trustee training, full stop. It shouldn't be a surprise to anyone that so many people from the library showed up today. That is civic engagement, and that's what this is all about. I want to commend my fellow citizens for showing up in support of the library and proving that it is an essential service, and that civic action can make an impact. Thank you again.
Thank you.
There's nobody else signed in.
Thank you very much. I'll go to item 12, Manager Brown.
Item 12 is Commissioners and County Managers' announcements, reports, and updates to include boards and commissions updates, requests for information, or topics for future agendas.
Do you have anything for us, Manager Brown?
I do not, Madam Chair.
All right, Vice Chair Herman and Commissioner Garcia, Commissioner Andriola, Commissioner Clark.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Just one quick item. I want to make sure to reemphasize the fact that it's my understanding through sources that may or may not be true, but I want to find out if there's any outstanding health department fines that haven't been collected, and if so, what is that number? Thank you. Number of fines and dollar amount. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We will take DA Candaris. We'll take a break, right? And go, okay, we're going to take a break, go do our attorney-client, item 10, and if folks want to do public comment, we'll be upstairs. Thank you very much. We'll take a break.